Morning, committee members. It's time to come to order. Carmen, would you take the attendance roll, please?
Budget Member Savick. Here. Commissioner Sparacino.
Here.
Commissioner Dyer.
Here.
Budget Member Barton.
Here.
Commissioner Roberts.
Here.
Chair Morris.
Here. All right, thank you, everybody. As we go through the different department presentations, I think you have in front of you that there's a schedule of times that have been allocated for each one of the department heads. It varies by the department. Randy's going to keep the timer for us so that we stay on track. Though we will make time for committee members' questions and comments. So not to be worried, you won't be held in time warp and not able to ask questions. So with that, we have the airport going first. Amber, if you wouldn't mind coming forward. There you are. Morning, Amber.
Morning.
You have a whopping 20 minutes with us this morning.
Okay, well, good. Good morning, everybody, commissioners, members of the budget committee. The airport gets to go first again this year, and so I decided that a sunrise photo taken from the roof of our terminal would be a great way to start the day. I'm always happy to talk about the airport, and here is our annual update and budget request for 26-27. Maybe not. There we go. We set a new calendar year record of 1.1 million passengers in 2025. That is a 4.4% increase over the former record set in 2019. We set all-time monthly records for 6 straight months, May through October. The continued passenger growth, while definitely welcome, has resulted in strains on airport systems, staffing, security screening, circulation, and overall operations. As anyone who has flown out of MFR can attest, the airport regularly operates at or above capacity during peak early morning and midday flight blocks. Everyone is looking forward to some breathing room once the expansion is complete, but more on that in a bit. The airport currently partners with 5 commercial airlines that provide direct service to 10 destinations and one-stop service to just about anywhere in the world. Almost all the airlines have added capacity, and we have maintained an average load factor of 80%. We continue to work on expanding our air service options to new destinations while retaining the wonderful service we already have and adding frequency on those routes. In 2025, those efforts resulted in Alaska adding new daily service to San Diego, and we've also added frequency to Portland, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. We're still actively working with several different airlines to replace our Burbank route after Avelo's departure from the West Coast, and we haven't given up on adding service to the Dallas area, Chicago, and other popular markets. Before we talk about the upcoming fiscal year, I wanted to show you some of our accomplishments over the past year. We have been busy. As you can see on the left, last summer we were able to accommodate 3 of the very large air tankers, the VLATs, at the same time on a recently expanded East Apron. And after our recently obtained environmental determination of no significant impact, we're looking forward to completing that project in the spring of 2027. The picture on the right shows the construction of our perimeter road. This road allows airport vehicle traffic to navigate the northern interior perimeter of the airfield. This project greatly improved this road and gives us efficient access to the east side of the airfield, greatly reducing the wear and tear on our vehicles. Work was also completed on our Northwest Development Project, which is shown in the 2 pictures on the left. We extended taxiway C to the north and constructed 2 new taxi lanes to the northwest corner of the airfield. This project provides access to a formerly undeveloped portion of airport property, and the site is now ready for aviation-related businesses and other economic development. Phase 2 of the general aviation apron expansion is shown on the right, and this added an aircraft parking area as well as taxi lanes to finish up this site. It is now shovel-ready for new private hangar construction. This engineer's drawing on the right gives you an idea of what the site may look like once all those private hangars get built. In addition to the large airfield infrastructure projects, we were able to modernize a couple of key revenue generating programs for us. On the left is a photo of the new flash parking lot equipment that uses license plate reader LPR technology to track the usage of our public parking lots. This new system replaced an aging and very maintenance-intensive park system and came with some additional benefits: an updated and efficient validation system and no more lost parking tickets. The pictures on the right show 2 of the 8 digital advertising monitors installed around the terminal. We also installed a large LED wall panel near bag claim. The airport partnered with Fuse Connect to digitalize and manage our advertising program to maximize advertising revenue through both in-market and community-first sales strategies. Although this program is relatively new, Fuse reports they have a strong pipeline of prospects they're working with on the digital ads, and we're happy to share with us, and we're happy to share with you that April's revenue looks to double March's, so we're on the right track there. And here you can see some of the airfield stuff we still have planned for 26-27. There's a few more construction projects scheduled for the coming year before we completely turn our focus to our terminal project. Our Remain Overnight, or RON apron, is shown in orange on that first picture on the left. It's starting construction this month, but work will continue into the next fiscal year with the addition of some necessary terminal apron work, shown in purple, to correct some grading issues on the existing concrete apron there. This is enabling work for the upcoming terminal project, and after it's completed, it will give us 4 to 5 more commercial aircraft parking spaces that's usable during construction as well as after construction for additional ROM parking. The corporate apron project, shown in yellow, will rehab the asphalt apron immediately adjacent to Millionaire and Mercy flights. We have been crack sealing these areas as needed for a while now, and we're definitely looking forward to completing that work and getting that looking good again. The red section in the photo of the right is that planned phase 2 work on the east apron that will finish the circulation route and fix the geometry on taxiway A3 East. That work should start early in 27 before the fire season and be done before then. And now let's talk about the terminal expansion project. The record passenger numbers mentioned earlier continue to put pressure on our existing facility and system, making this project more pressing every month. We have just finished the conceptual design phase of the terminal expansion design, and these are the latest conceptual renderings generated after that phase. The construction manager, general contractor selection is currently underway, and they should be on board by the end of June. With that contractor input, we will complete the schematic design phase during the upcoming fiscal year and estimate construction will begin in the second half of 2027. Some enabling work, that apron work we talked about, and potentially some smaller interior work, often referred to as phase 0, will be done in the coming fiscal year. Phase 1 of this Phase 1 of this project is expected to include the new concourse and post-security hold room, a larger and reconfigured bag claim area, new equipment for both inbound and outbound ends of the bag system, and the replacement of our existing revolving doors with modern straight walk-through security egress doors. We also plan to enhance the passenger experience at Medford by adding boarding bridges to the new concourse, offering more concession options, larger restrooms, and other amenities. The airport will balance construction activity, funding availability, and service levels while maintaining compliance and safety throughout the project. And now we should talk a little bit about our proposed budget. Sorry. Our budget projects $21.5 million in airport operating revenue for the coming year, with an expected passenger number increase of 3 to 4%. The breakdown of where our operating revenue comes from is shown on the pie chart. At about a third of the total, parking remains our largest single source of operating revenue. And as I mentioned earlier, the parking lot was recently updated, the equipment, and several cameras have also been installed throughout the public lots. No increase in parking rates is anticipated in 26-27, as our rates remain just a dollar or more below those of other airports in the state. Terminal rent and landing fees account for about another third of our total revenue. This primarily comes from our 5 commercial air carriers through negotiated rates and charges each year. Car rental concessions provide about 10%, and other revenue sources, including our fixed-based operators, restaurant, gift shop, vending, fuel fees, hangar rentals, advertising, etc., make up the balance, or about a quarter of our operating revenue. The proposed operating expenses are projected at $18.5 million. The airport has 4 operating programs. The administration program is budgeted at just under $40 million, or 21%, and is primarily comprised of personnel costs and professional services contracts. Our ops and maintenance program budget is obviously the largest at 65% of the total, just over $12 million. The increases here are driven mainly by a large airfield maintenance project and equipment purchases. The fire truck will replace our 1992 Oshkosh, and both it and the snowplow will be reimbursed by passenger facility charges in the future. Our security program budget is $2.5 million, about 13%, and that tiny little light slice up there is our diversification program. Budgeted expenses here are less than 1% of the overall total operating expenses and cover routine maintenance on the facilities that are included in this program. The very important non-operating revenue sources the airport enjoys are federal grants, usually AIP, Airport Improvement Program grants, state grants, Critical Oregon Airport Relief, the core grants, Connect Oregon. We also rely on passenger facility charges. As we mentioned, those are still $4.50 per person per enplanement. The airport gets about $4.39 of those. The airlines retain the other 11 cents. And then the customer facility charges, or CFCs, are $6 per transaction day for renting a car at the airport, and that was increased this year from $3.26 to help pay for some of the terminal expansion project. This last slide, usually the airport has 3 funds that we put in our budget, and this year you will see a 4th. Fund 500 is our main airport fund. That includes operating revenues and expenses, capital projects, contingencies, reserves, and our fund balance. Fund 501 is our debt service fund and is budgeted to cover the debt service for the year on our existing terminal bonds. Fund 503 is our passenger facility charges fund. That is expected to remain relatively flat as we use what we bring in this year. And the 4th fund we added this year is Fund 504 for our terminal expansion fund. The $16.3 million budgeted in this fund represents continued terminal design costs, financing costs, and some early construction expenses, those phase 0 and some of that early work, for a total all airport funds budget of $154.6 million. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That sums up all the important stuff we've been working on at the airport this past year and the exciting things we have planned for the future. I've always loved this picture of our airport in the spring, and I thought it felt like a good place to go as we look to just expand it and make it even better in the future. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Yeah, thank you, Amber. I just want to emphasize for the public that the airport is completely self-supporting, and you covered that, but I just want to make it clear for the public, those folks who are watching, and including debt service and construction projects, remodels are all state and federally funded, and operations are supported by your revenue that you generate yourself. So no property tax dollars are used in support of the airport. I wanted to ask a question. So many airports were really strangled by this TSA problem the last few months. How did it go for us? I didn't hear anything from anybody in terms of complaints, but I'm just wondering how it went.
Sure, yeah. Well, they're continuing to work through a shutdown of TSA even today. So that hasn't changed, but we actually fared really well. Our folks at Medford, they showed up to work every single day. We didn't have a lot of call outs like you saw at some of other airports around the country, and They really were, they felt well supported by the community and they showed up to work every day. So we were lucky we didn't have impacts that others saw.
That's nice to hear. Yeah. Question? Yeah, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, this is something I've noticed before, I just haven't asked the question. Parking revenue is 32% of operating revenue. Is that standard? Is that kind of an industry for an airport this size?
It is.
Seems like a large chunk.
Yes, across pretty much every airport, parking is probably the largest single source of revenue any airport has.
Okay, well, good.
Mr. Chair, may I add something to our presentation real
Sure.
quick? You kind of hit on what I was going to say. I do want to say, though, however, that the airport is an enterprise fund, which makes it different than most funds in the county. Going to Commissioner Dyer's question, they're allowed to make money. So other activities in the county that aren't enterprise fund, we can't make money. We can only charge what it costs us. The airport, and this is more for the public, airports typically fund under two models: a compensatory model or a residual model is what they're called. A residual model, I'm going to speak generally, is airfield leases less airfield expenses leaves a balance. Typically, airlines fund that balance through landing fees and the portion of budgets that Amber talked about the airlines fund. We actually, because we make revenue, subsidize those costs, so we're able to attract airlines by keeping our landing fees low. And I think that's important for the public to know. We can't fully subsidize them, and then because the airlines make money, they should contribute to the development of the airport, and that's how they do it. And there's also a compensatory model where essentially you make all of the revenues and cover the expenses by airport activities. Outside of our gates, we're a compensatory model. So we have car rentals, we have parking, we have leases to people. Like, people will ask, well, why is that building going in and out of the airport? We lease ground to develop revenues to pay for airport functions to offset those landing fees. I just think these are broad level issues that our public maybe normally doesn't understand. And the airport carries a large fund balance, and we get a lot of questions, well, you have all that money sitting there in the fund balance, why don't you use it to build a new jail? And I'm going to keep beating this drum as we go along. We can't. It's illegal for us to take airport funds and use them for other purpose. So all of those monies stay in the airport, and that's how we're able to fund this construction. And I just also want to point out, Amber talked about 16 million or so in our airport expansion project. This project's really about a $115 million project. It'll be funded over several years, and this is just the first part of that. And that's not captured in the budget, so I do want the public to know that as well. And then just the final thing is, because we have such a large fund balance, we're going to start the new airport project on our fund balance without taking debt. While we do intend to take debt because they're tax exempt bond status debt, then we have to spend them within 3 years. So we're going to wait till we get some of our money spent before we take the debt. So there will be additional debt service in probably maybe not even the next budget, but either the next or the one after.
Budget, yeah.
So I just wanted to add that, and thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Curious, and a lot of people are probably going to groan when I ask this, but why are PFCs and CFCs not included in operating revenue?
The PFCs can only be used on projects that the FAA approves. So there's a very
it's not a
long
reg-
process that you go through to file a PFC application with the FAA with the named projects and the different information they need on those projects. The airlines have to be consulted and buy off on those as well. So there's quite a long list of what we can actually use the PFCs for. We're in the process of doing our PFC application 14 right now to extend that ability to collect PFCs and use them on those identified projects. CFCs are a little different. We can use those for anything landside. So that's why we're going to the baggage claim expansion and the pieces that are landside of the terminal, we can use for those. So
I do just want to say one more thing, and I'm sorry for interrupting. We're the only county in the state that has a regional airport. I mean, I think this is important. People don't understand that this is not typically a function of county government. We run our airport very well. It's a huge economic generator for our community. And it creates a new level of complexity in county governance and management that most all other counties in our state don't deal with. So I want to also point that out to the public. Thank you.
that's true. We are the only county owned and operated airport in Oregon. So
Other questions, comments? Okay, Amber, thank
thank
you.
you guys so much. Have a great day.
Next up, we have Sheriff. Morning, Nate.
Morning. We got a few handouts. Jacob's going to be passing those along to everyone.
And Nate, you have 45 minutes, I think, with us this morning?
I think you guys just cut into that a little bit, so I'll make up for it.
Okay.
I'll be a little quicker this
Well,
morning.
you have, as I've said to you many times, the most complicated and challenging budget of any of the departments, I think, anyway, in the county, so.
I would agree, especially this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, commissioners, Danny, thank you for the opportunity to share our budget presentation with you this morning. I always like to start my budget presentation with our mission and value statement, and that is serving our community through values-oriented law enforcement, and then our 4 core values: character, competence, courage, and compassion. And that statement and those values guide how we provide service to the public, how we hire, how we do our training, how we review incidents within the sheriff's office, and really how all of our employees approach their jobs at the sheriff's office. So my goals, sheriff's goals ongoing. I've had these goals. This is my 10th consecutive budget presentation, so a decade as a sheriff. And these have always been my goals, and they will be as long as I am the sheriff. Improve safety and livability in Jackson County, maintain the public's trust, maximize our resources, and be the best sheriff's office in the state of Oregon. Again, there's no measurement for these. These are just goals that we always strive to obtain. And I think as I go through some of our accomplishments this year, you can see that I believe we're the best sheriff's office in the state of Oregon, and I'll give you some examples of why. So in your handouts, I provided a Word document that has the accomplishments. I did not put them on slides as per some of the suggestions or recommendations from the committee and commissioners, so you're going to have to follow along or just listen. So I think one thing to note over 2025, and when I talk about our budget, I know obviously we're on a fiscal year from July 1 to June 30th, but all of the statistics and our accomplishments are on a calendar year. The reason for that is we're still in our current fiscal year, obviously, and most of our stats don't even get all the way entered, or it would be very impossible. There's a delay on stats, reporting, toxicologies, all of the things. So anyways, so everything that I'm going to be reporting would be on the calendar year from January to December. So for our jail, big accomplishment, we were able to keep our jail capacity between 285 and 300 for the entire year, despite being, having several vacancies throughout the year. This required a considerable amount of overtime and work by our team, patrol staff helping out when they can, and our administrative team in the jail working overtime to keep all the beds open. On the patrol side or operations side of things, we provided a high level of service despite, what we'll talk about the reductions in our staff over the years, but they still go out every day and do a great job for our community. We measure this through, we have an application or program called Spider Tech, which is a automated system when somebody calls 911 or requests service from the sheriff's office. They get sent updates on the case, and they have the opportunity to fill out a survey at the end of their call for service, which is all automated. The individuals can choose to partake in that or not, but generally speaking, all of the feedback we get from our service is very high, and the people are satisfied with our service. Also, the comments I get in public when I'm out and about or via emails, people generally are happy with the service that we're providing. Say office morale has maintained steady despite significant reductions in staffing, which does put the work across less people, so that can be challenging, but we're still able to recruit and retain very qualified employees, and our employees are our best recruiters. And so that's something I've always thought was extreme value to our agency and to the county, is to have employees who are happy to be at work and go out and sing the praises of the county so that we can retain qualified people. We reduced training costs for our core skills last year by about $40,000 just by moving schedules around and being creative, which I know in our budget doesn't seem like a lot, but every bit helps. We're still able to provide the same hours of training. Our operations team removed nearly 500 impaired drivers from the roadway in 2025. That is a significant number. I think we're the second highest in the state. I think we're behind Washington County, which is considerably bigger and have a lot more staff. So our team did a great job. And along those lines, Officer Jared McLennan was recognized by the Multidisciplinary Task Force for Impaired Driving as one of the DUI Officers of the Year. So that's a pretty high accomplishment. Sergeant Aaron Grissom was recognized as a DUI Trainer of the Year in the state, so state recognition. Through the Oregon State Sheriff's Association, Corporal Cynthia Malari was recognized as Deputy of the Year. This is given out to one deputy out of 36 sheriff's offices or 36 counties, so that's a pretty high award. The Oregon State Marine Board, we have a contract with. Deputy Noah Strohmeyer was named the Oregon State Marine Board Deputy of the Year. And we also had a Deputy NMSO, Valerie Prins, recognized for life-saving efforts on the river. So that's I think some pretty good testament to the quality of work being done by the men and women of the Sheriff's Office. We continue to have effective criminal justice and community partnerships. I could spend way more than 45 minutes talking about all of those, but our partnerships have enabled us to provide effective service across our county. I think the criminal justice relationships are good for our community. They provide efficiencies and help us to better serve the public. IMET has continued to deter black market marijuana grows. We had a really big operation this past year. It was partnered with the federal agents, DEA, IRS, and that was connected to a DTO that was shipping cannabis, marijuana across the state to Middle Eastern individuals who were selling marijuana to soldiers unbeknownst to them, and basically trying to undermine the military. So our team has done a pretty good job, and unfortunately we were sending all of that product from Southern Oregon, but we were able to serve, I think, 7 or 8 search warrants on different locations to disrupt that DTO. We've really expanded our technology with drones. We set up what they call a tech truck, but it's basically a mobile command station for technology for our robots and drones, and this technology keeps us a lot safer, reduces liability, and provides our deputies with real-time information when they're out on scenes that can help them make better decisions. So that was a pretty big undertaking, but we got that done this year. Over the last several years, we've had to reduce about 27 positions or so from the Sheriff's Office, and I'll go through that more, but we were able to do that through managing our FTEs appropriately, not having any layoffs, and I think that was a lot of work for our administrative team to navigate that, but we did through attrition or retirements and whatnot, but layoffs are, they can be traumatic for an organization, and we avoided that, so we're proud of that work. And then lastly, we received a donation from Cow Creek Tribe this year, an amount of $275,000 to set up an incinerator to dispose of contraband, specifically drugs. Since Covanta shut down about a year and a half ago, no place in the state has been able to destroy contraband locally. And so we're going to have the first incinerator in the state of Oregon, hopefully up in a few months. Okay. So those are just some of the accomplishments this year, or this past year. So if you look at our Corrections Bureau, our lodgings and forced releases, our jail continues to stay extremely busy. We had 12,689 lodgings this past year, which was a pretty high number, and I'll show you our comparators across the state next. But forced releases are up by over 1,000, as well as Senate Bill 48 releases. Senate Bill 48 is just a legislative mandate about who can stay in custody is all. Prior to Senate Bill 48, almost all of those individuals would have been forced released from our jail anyway because of the overcrowding situation and the lack of capacity. When you look at across the state, the only county I don't have in there is Multnomah. So I have the next 6 largest counties. Multnomah is just so much bigger than us. We were the second busiest jail by lodgings and bookings, just behind Washington County. So very busy per capita. And again, when you look at the forced releases, we were number one in the state in forced releases, which is not a good thing, but it's not inconsistent from the past decade or so. When you look at our Corrections Bureau comparison, we have 346 total beds. We run 300 for various reasons, but best practices on operating a correctional facility. And then you can see the black bar graph is our average daily population. So you can see our average daily population exceeds our bed capacity. The only other county in the same 6 counties that has near that problem is Washington, and they're about even. So again, we're kind of upside down each day. And that's been that way for years and years. When you look at comparable budgets for corrections, you look at our budget, it's about $19.3 million. You look at comparable counties and their corrections budgets, and I think I show this just to say that we're doing a lot with what we have here. I think we're providing a pretty good service compared to what it costs other counties to run their jails and the amount of lodgings that they have. Warrants failed to appears, indicative of the health of the criminal justice system. We were making really good progress post-COVID, opening up the jail. And I think other factors come into play with this, and I'm sure District Attorney will talk about the attorney shortages and other things. So we'll have to see how this settles, but, they're up this past year, which, again, they just cause extra work for the entire criminal justice system. Warrants in general and FTAs failed to appears. Concealed handgun licenses. This is a service we provide to the public, and our team does a great job. You can see numbers are up this past year, and renewals specifically are up. We started sending out automatic notifications when people were about to expire. With the technology, it's a lot easier to send out things like that, and so people started renewing more often. But numbers are up overall, which is a good thing for us, because there is some revenue generated from that to recoup our costs to do that service. Criminal records has been fairly busy. Obviously, with reduction in FTE, there's a reduction in work product, so reports are down a little bit. But one thing to note is kind of the expungement piece of things. We'll have to pay attention to that over the next couple of years. Changes in the laws, and specifically when the bills regarding the Measure 110 reform, there's mandatory expungements. It's not basically, when individuals choose to do that, we have to do it now. So our records supervisor does anticipate a churn of work when we hit that 3-year period with Measure 110. Now, we don't have as many cases as, say, like MPD, so I don't know what our workload will be, but that will be something to watch in the future. Calls for service. You see we're down a little bit this past year. Most of that is going to be proactivity related, and again, it can be attributed to several things, mainly the reduction of staff on the road. When you have less people working, you're going to have less calls as far as proactive work, less traffic stops. We had to cut our traffic team this past over the last 2 years. So we don't have a daytime traffic unit specifically. We do have some overlap with our DUI cars, but so you just have a little bit less work. There was a slight reduction in calls for service through our dispatch center. That amount equates to probably about 4 calls a day, so not a ton. Response times overall were down this past year, so that's good. In some instances, overall times were down. Our priority ones we were a little bit quicker on, a little bit slower on priority 2s. And again, I've looked at this for 10 years, and it's hard to tell what factors play into this. Obviously, with a big county, more staff, you're likely going to reduce calls for service time, or response times. But you never know. Sometimes it could be the luck of the draw where the deputy is when the call comes in, because we have such a big county. Fatal motor vehicle accidents, pretty consistent. I don't have toxicologies yet. Again, that's a state function, and they're quite behind. So I'll be able to report the 25 numbers to you next year. But you can see that we've stayed fairly consistent. I was able to track how many fatals are in county jurisdiction versus the others and or overall, and we've been fairly consistent. A little spike last year, and then down 1 this year in our jurisdiction. I think a testament to keeping those numbers low is the amount of DUI arrests, that 500 impaired drivers. A big portion of our fatal car crashes are impaired. So likely prevented a lot more this past year. Medical examiner's office, again, a function we provide to the sheriff's office. Suicides are fairly steady, down a little bit from last year, so that's good. And then overdoses are also down low in like 5 years, so that's promising. We'll hope that trend continues. Overall, somewhat consistent as far as how busy our office is, with a little fluctuation in cases. So this is just kind of a historical budget review. Everything costs more. I think Mr. Jordan talked about this in his budget presentation, is things are just expensive. Everything costs more. Our budget, as you can see, our request this year, our total budget request is less than last year. However, that will change. We are going through bargaining sessions with 2 different associations in our office, and so that number will change based on the outcome of those contracts or when they are settled. When you look at our FTEs, 4 years ago we had 194 full-time employees requested in our budget presentation. This year we have 168.7. So a pretty significant reduction, but yet costs still relatively the same. So there's, materials and services is a big part of that. If you look at over the last 5 budget cycles, our materials and services are gone up almost $6 million. Some of that is vehicles, jail medical, risk. There's a bunch of factors to that, but it's become very expensive to do business. Historical chargebacks, again, you look at them over the years, everything costs more through the whole county. All the services are vehicles. We have motor pool vehicles of, I want to say, not quite doubled in cost over the last 4 or 5 years, but probably fairly close at this point. And we still have to drive. Gas is more expensive, as you know. All the contracts that we have that have personnel attached to them cost more money. So, even though our FTEs are dropping considerably, our chargebacks are still relatively either plateaued or have gone up over time. So it is expensive across the board for business. When you look at our budget by bureau, this is just a way for the budget committee and the commissioners to review where our money is going. You can see a big portion is 41% of our budget is to corrections, 6% to administration, White City is 5%, support services is 7%, and I'll kind of show you an outline of where those services are shortly. Field services 4%, investigations 12%, and then the criminal, which is the patrol, is 23%. And then this is just a staffing chart to look, again, just for reference. We have corrections sworn, 57 personnel. Criminal sworn is 64. That does include granted positions like IMET. And then you have non-sworn, 47.7 staff, support staff. Here's just a kind of a historical view of our staffing and vacancies. One of our metrics is to try to maximize our FTEs that we are authorized. This one, we obviously, when we're presenting a budget that has reductions, we're right there. I think that's accurate. That was accurate as of last week. I think we might have had one more person resign, so we might be at 2 vacancies right now. But you can see there's a pretty significant drop off, and unfortunately, we're looking at like 10-year ago numbers for staffing, and it doesn't include all of the extra staff that is associated with grants or funded. Their positions have mandates as to the functions they must perform based on the grant requirements. So it's not ideal when you look at the work from 10 years ago. Everything takes a little bit more time and energy and effort. Technology is a blessing, but it's also created a considerable amount of work, cell phones, body cams, search warrants, all those things take extra time. And in fact, I think estimates is it probably takes 50% more time to do a case that was similar 10 years ago. Impacts to service capacity, just like I said, had to make tough choices over the past few years. We've cut 2 traffic positions. We would have had to cut others, but we have got grant funding for our DUI enforcement cars. We've had to cut a community service deputy, detective position, our MADG position. Special service sergeant, that was the individual who ran a lot of our traffic team, some of the other stuff, helped with large events, fire response. We lost a civil deputy position, administrative sergeant position. I met detectives and patrol. Now those were funded, and we realized those would drop off over time. However, we still have a considerable amount of work to do in the marijuana, but most all those positions have always been funded through grant process, and the money has just dwindled, so those were kind of expected. Our COPS grant, or problem-oriented policing deputies that worked in our rural areas, we had to not fill and remove school safety deputy, and we've had to cut some criminal and correction records deputies, 8 corrections deputies projected this year, and then a project program coordinator. So despite that, I know it's kind of gloom and doom, but we've been creative. So we have been working diligently over the years, and not just, I would say I've been the sheriff for 10 years, but other sheriffs have also worked on these things. When you look at positions that are funded by alternative funding outside maybe the general fund, and not saying that the general fund doesn't contribute at all to that, that's not what this is, but just when you look at what we've been able to provide the public by being creative, that isn't necessarily supported by general fund. 26.2 positions on our operations side are funded by outside the general fund, and then we have 9.75 positions through corrections. So I think that's great because we're trying to find creative ways to continue to provide great service to our community despite the challenges that we're had. You can see we bring in about $8.5 million, and that does include our White City district and our contract with Shady Cove and other things, but a lot of grant work as well, being creative. So I think that's good. Just shows that the community is getting a pretty good deal for what our revenues are able to be brought in through our tax services. Is we're providing more than those taxes alone are providing. And just to give you an idea, we've put this in there to show you the cost of what it would be like if we had the same amount of FTEs. It would be very expensive. Our budget request would be several $1 million higher if we were to be continuing to run at 194 FTEs. So it is very expensive for personnel as well. And then I'm not going to go through each one of these. These are more for your review, but this does break down our organization as a whole. So we have our command staff, basically myself and Captain Aldridge, and then we have 6 lieutenants now. Each one of them has a division within our office, and then we break those down in the subsequent sides. So we have 2 lieutenants assigned to our jail. One does operations, which is kind of the people work, and the other one does the administrative work and all of the management of our vendors and contractors, medical, and all those things. So it's like a little city in there. It's very busy. As you can see from our statistics, we're very busy. And then patrol is broken down, or the operations side, into 4 different entities, or really 3, and then we have an administrative position. Again, I won't go through each of these. I'm going to give you back some time today, I think, hopefully. But our field services, and they're broken down with the number of FTEs that are assigned to each of those as well. So review at your leisure. And it just outlines some of the responsibilities that are housed within each of those divisions as well. So goals and challenges moving forward. Obviously we want to continue to provide a great service to the public. We want to keep Jackson County safe and keep our livability improving in our county. I think we need to be creative, or we need to be collaborative in how we look for additional ways to fund public safety in Jackson County. We know we need a new jail. I'll talk about that as well. It's on the next bullet point. We know we needed a new jail for many years. And now we need a new jail, and we need funding for that, and we need funding for other public safety too. So I think when you see the way it has been tracking over the years, I don't see costs decreasing to do business in public safety. And so the model that we've been operating on, we've been doing okay, but it's not sustainable. And I'm concerned that medical is going to go up more. That was one of our larger hits this past few years. Our medical is over doubled in the jail, just medical services, our contract. It's over $4 million now, and a couple years ago it was $2 million. So that was one big increase we had to absorb, and then others as well. So I think we need to be looking forward to get ahead of this before it gets worse, honestly. We're going to, it was mentioned that we would likely be having to close the basement of the jail this next fiscal year, so beginning of July. And, obviously that's not ideal for us as the sheriff's office or the criminal justice system. So we want to work to find ways to not have to do that or to minimize that. But we're going to have to just see where things land with bargaining, and then also see what other expenses we have or incur over the next several months. Again, we want to continue to provide professional law enforcement response. Some things that are concerned when I say goals and challenges these moving forward are kind of one of the same, because we want to manage these potential things. We know we've had a pretty mild fire season, so we'll continue to hope for that. But those things tax our office, and with a reduction in staff, that does hurt our capacity. So we're going to have to figure that out. Where we've made reductions over the past 3-4 years have been in things I would consider like extra duties, so to speak, the traffic or the cops grants or these things. But these things all provide opportunities to reach out to the community in different ways, or address specific problems, or to be more attentive or responsive. And without that staffing and being busy, those things have been cut. So luckily, I believe with our community, we have a lot of stock in the bank. But again, as time wears, those things when we're not able to do as much, it can hurt your trust or with the community. So we're going to continue to do the best that we can. And then IMET is another concern. Our IMET team has been extremely effective over the past several years. For those of you that remember 2021 and some of the years before, it was awful. But IMET and our partners have done a great job. Our funding does expire for that next July, June 30th. So hopefully legislatively there'll be a fix for that, and that'll be in the regular session starting in January. So we're going to advocate for additional funding, but if we were to lose that, that would be an additional, I think, about 8-9 FTEs plus some, I think, a code enforcement. So that would be another pretty significant blow to our capacity, and I think it would be a real shame for Jackson County. All the work that we've done could likely be undone. So that's a big challenge for us in the next coming budget cycle. Okay, look at that. Give you back 15 minutes of my time and for questions.
Craig, can I add a few things?
Yes,
also?
please.
I'm going to add a little bit to the doom and gloom here. One thing the sheriff didn't cover in too much depth that I think is important for you and the public to know is the sheriff's office is represented by a bargaining unit that's subject to binding arbitration. Binding arbitration for their unit essentially requires us to pay the same as Deschutes County pays by law. So we've been able to negotiate a couple of other counties for arbitrators to consider, but it's 50,000 up or down from your population. And I want the public to understand. So when we pay our employees, the law says that's who we're supposed to compare to. Now, if anybody knows Deschutes County, they have tens of millions more in revenue than our county. They actually have a lower tax base, but they have a countywide law enforcement district,
Jail district.
urban or rural law enforcement district. They just have, they have transient lodging tax, so their revenues are at least, I would say a third more than our revenues. And so we're talking 20+ million more that they have to work with than we do. The last 3 years, the contract that we had to, and this is really the problem. I mean, if I had to, there's three things. Medical, the sheriff mentioned. Risk and liability has gone out of control, which is not necessarily in our control overall. And then the cost of employees. The sheriff's budget has never gone down in my entire career here. And while it shows in his budget that it's going down, it's not, because we don't budget the costs of increases for employees while we're in bargaining. That will be added. What we can afford will be added to the budget. In the last 3 years, the Sheriff's Department employees received 32% pay increases. That affected our payroll costs about 40%. Now, we're limited to 3% growth in our tax base. We get about 4% because of new construction that comes on the roll. So we got 12% in an increase in tax base. By the way, that's about $2 million a year increase in our property tax. It's been many millions more to fund a 32% pay increase. That is the biggest hit to the sheriff's office that is causing this issue. And as I said, that 32% pay increase resulted in about a 40% payroll cost. Here's why. When we pay people more, the payroll tax is more. Their accrued leaves all of a sudden overnight get an increase in value that we have to buy out when we pay them. And we also got hit with increased PERS rates during those 3 years, and we got hit with Oregon paid leave, a new tax on the employer and employee. So I want the budget committee to understand it's not a matter of us managing our revenues properly. This really is an expense-driven issue in the sheriff's office. I also want to say that in 2021, the budgeted FTE in the sheriff's office was 178.5. And the sheriff mentioned 27, kind of picked a high point. We're now at 168.7 in this budget. So that's about 10 FTE net from 2021, what we budgeted. The numbers have changed versus what we budgeted or adopted versus what the actual FTE were over those times. But part of that expansion of FTE was IMET. So we're making cuts in this budget in IMET, which we agreed we knew we would have to do when we accepted the funds from the state. So, and I'm going through these because these are planned reductions for the most part. We knew we were going to have to cut IMED, and the sheriff mentioned today again, it's not ideal. We don't want to cut it, but we need the state to step up and fund it. The state took away our ability to tax marijuana and said they would fund these activities and then didn't. So we sought funding from the state to be able to do it, and we were ultimately successful in getting that. Also, over the years, and I know those who've been on the budget committee a long time, the sheriff has carried FT in his budget that weren't actually funded. He carried them for the purpose of recruitment. At one point, it was as high as 10. In this last budget, it was 5. So we're losing 4 IMET positions and 5 unbudgeted positions that were never budgeted to be filled. So I just want to, the sheriff is making a point that he's taking reductions. These reductions are mitigated by the planning that we've done and the sheriff has done, and he mentioned that he left vacancies. We have not laid anyone off. These are positions that we planned to not fill for the purpose of not having to lay people off, but we also anticipated reductions. We also anticipated the increase in the contract from negotiations and knew that we would have to cut positions in order to pay those costs. Now we're facing another bargaining right now, and the sheriff's budget, as he said, has some doom and gloom in it. That doom and gloom could get better depending on how bargaining turns out, or it can get worse. If as far as I've been able to cost right now, the union's proposal to us, the big union, will cost us another $15 million over 3 years. We'll get $2 million a year in property tax increase. That's for the entire county government. So what they're proposing is $15 million in additional pay increases over the next 3 years. And we're going to have $6 million total to fund the whole county. So if we go to arbitration over this and it becomes an issue, we're going to have to make further reductions. We don't have additional operating revenue to pay those costs. So it could either get better or it can get worse. I just want you to be aware of that. And as I said, we haven't cut the sheriff's budget. So this is not a matter of we didn't fund the sheriff properly. It's a matter of expenses, and a lot of them are not in our control. So I know I took up a lot, and maybe the sheriff wants to make comments on what my comments were, but I think that you needed to know that.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this many different ways. The bottom line is that over the last few years, there's been a significant reduction in FTE, some planned. Unfunded positions, we're hoping that there would be funding. Doesn't make it more pleasant just because it was over 1 year instead of 2 years or 3 years. It's all stuff we can't do the same that we used to do. And I think as long as, you know, that's the message today, and is that in transparency, we can't provide the same service that we used to provide. It's going to cost more to continue to do business. And I don't see how we're going to get out from under this. Employees are going to continue to cost more. They cost more everywhere. They cost more for everything, not just law enforcement. Now, there was a post 2020, you know, with George Floyd and all the reform, a lot of people getting out of law enforcement business. Sheriff's offices who didn't have the ability to recruit, as well as ours in some cases, or cities where they were hemorrhaging staff and needed bodies. Salaries shot up nationwide, statewide. Unfortunately, we are, you know, when we have bargaining units and they look at all those things, there are many sheriff's offices making cuts across the state. Unfortunately, many, and we don't have the same capacity as a city entity to throw a service charge or a utility bill fee or whatever to just generate revenue. What I'm saying today is if we continue to cut staffing, or we lose more of our alternative funding sources through IMET, because even though they're IMET, they're providing a service to the community. They're a presence. We're able to use them in search warrants. We're able to use them in emergencies to help out. And every body that we have reduced is less capacity for our community. I think the overall message here is we can debate where it was cut, when it was cut, how it was cut, whose fault it is. It's a combination of things. But if we don't look for a creative way to increase revenue, and is that a levy, is that a district, is that some other method, we're going to continue to hemorrhage staffing, because unless there's a significant shift in the paradigm of employee costs, inflation, all the things, we're going to continue to be in the same boat with our current ability to raise revenue through our property taxes and the cost to do business. And so I say this today just as to put on our plate is in the next fiscal year, we all need to work on how we're going to provide adequate services to our community and hopefully at some point still look at a new jail. So I know that's a lot, but.
I appreciate comments from both of you, and I hope that the public who's watching are paying close attention to this conversation, because it is serious. There is a wall eventually that we're going to hit if we haven't hit it already. And I think this committee is extremely concerned, and it's why I led with the comment that you have the most complicated budget. Not only are you dealing with these kinds of issues, which are extremely difficult to manage for you and your team, but you also have the day-to-day obstacles that keep being thrown in your path, you know, that cause you to go this way or that way when you're planning on going that way.
Yeah.
So it's we get it. Wish we could do something for you about it, but it's a serious problem.
Yeah. And I'm always reiterating, I'm thankful for the investment that the county does make to the sheriff's office. I'm not saying I don't believe that the county should do things differently. We are all, well, I do think we're all going to have to look at things a different path forward if we're going to sustain services long-term for this community. I don't want to see us go backwards to the point that it's not recoverable. And there is that point. Once you fall off the wall, it's very hard to bring back. You start losing staff, qualified employees. You can't retain, recruit. Services dwindle, and then you don't have the ability to bring qualified employees. And the cost to the county and to the community will be exponentially worse than if we just go out and proactively seek funding.
And let me just say, we are doing all of those things that Nate and I talk almost every day or every other day. Like, we literally are trying hard to figure out how to make all of this work, and we haven't given up. Like, we're hopeful that we can still come up with solutions, but every year the option for how many solutions are available keeps shrinking. So,
Yeah. Questions? Rick, go ahead.
So obviously, we know general fund revenue is only going to go up 3, possibly 4%. That's capped. We have nothing we can do about that. And you need alternative revenue sources. IMET, obviously, we need to continue to lobby for that. And then short of a countywide law enforcement, public safety levy, whatever we would call it, These communities, these outlying communities that as we cut positions may see less coverage, has there been any discussions about creating districts somewhat like the White City Law Enforcement District and other outlying communities? I mean, is that even an option as far as?
I don't think we've tried to look at that per se, like a finite amount of districts. I think it gets kind of complicated there. It could be. I think Danny might know a little bit more, or Joel on the legal side of things. They could create small districts. It would be tough to manage, and I think the costs, depending on how big that district was, would be pretty expensive when you start narrowing down like a small area that wanted a deputy or two. Their tax could go up exponentially in that area. Of course, they're choosing to vote for that, I guess, in that regard. But it would, I think, even in the costs across the community for public safety is probably a more passable levy or district idea.
The issue probably that we have with that, Commissioner, is we have a White City Enhanced Law Enforcement District. The majority of the sheriff's work in the county happens in that area because that's where the biggest population lives. You could wrap a rural law enforcement district around the rest of the county, and it's not going to generate as much money as White City for the services for the area. So because White City's already apportioned off, it's very difficult to convince other people that aren't as in such dense populations out in the unincorporated area to move forward with that.
Well, is there any appetite, demand for additional resources in the White City Enhanced Law Enforcement District? Of course, you need to raise the permanent rate limit to do that, but
You can't raise the permanent rate.
but I mean, obviously the voters would have to approve it. But my point is, if you're looking for alternative revenue sources,
Yeah, we actually did some. We are going to be funding a detective position from White City as it has grown this next fiscal year, and the workload out there, they are quite busy using detective services. So that was one way, but I think
we can't
long-term-
even change the district with a vote. I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
And the council can advise on that if you. Council's here if you
okay,
want.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I think, obviously there's a lot of discussions to be had about this in the future, but I do think the services that the sheriff's office provides all of the county, not just the outlying areas, but we've been in the cities the last couple of weeks on some major incidents, offering support either through detectives or our SWAT team on some pretty high-risk events. Many of these towns don't have capabilities for SWAT teams, negotiators, tech trucks, all these things, detective divisions, and when they have something that happens, we go. And obviously we have good partnerships with Medford, they help out as well, but we're typically, because we go on a patrol function and then it escalates into something else, and then our resources are going. So all the cities benefit from the services that the sheriff's office provides, whether that's patrol, civil, SAR, corrections. Every city is utilizing our service, and they're all paying for it too. I mean, everybody's paying the base tax rate, so it's a good thing that we can do. But we have a lot of irons in the fire, and so I think increasing services countywide is going to be needed in the future, not just in one localized area per se.
You have to remember, we've been living with the loss of 15.4 million or 23 million total from ONC stopping. It happened 2 weeks after I was here. I do want you all and the public to know, through this whole period of time, we haven't cut the sheriff's budget. And that's really an amazing feat, considering we lost 20% of our general fund revenue and 30% of our road fund revenue. That's caught up with us. I mean, you can only do that for so long.
Yeah, Colleen?
And I'd just like to add, being ONC was brought up, that those are being reorganized and relooked at, I think, hopefully for a better future for ONC timber receipts to the counties that were supposed to be for these services. So I know I'm on that ONC board, and we are pushing for that sustained yield timber harvest model back with those receipts at now 75% coming to the counties.
Yeah, that's obviously a promising idea, and hopefully that comes to fruition. And maybe in 5 or 10 years, maybe that's big enough to support the sheriff's office revenue. But I think we need to be proactive, even in the interim, to not fall off that cliff and be at a point where it takes us a decade or longer to repair or rebuild the office.
Any other? Okay, thank you, Nate.
Thank you.
All right, next we have the district attorney. I can't get that back on. Morning, Patrick.
Morning, Chair Morris.
I think you have, according to my sheet here, 20 minutes with us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, good morning, Chair Morris, other members of the Budget Committee, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here today to talk about our budget and the great work we've done in the last year at our office. I don't have quite as good of a picture as Amber did. Need Amber to come take some pictures of our office, but it's a picture of our office, it's turning 10 years old this year. We are still very thankful for it. It still feels new, and so we continue to be thankful to the county for investing in that for us. I like to include our mission statement every time, just to kind of dispel, I think, a common myth about prosecutors is that we count convictions or we're only in it for the wins, and that is very much not true, at least with our office. And I think our mission statement reflects that, of really our highest duty is pursuing justice, whatever that looks like, and bearing in mind the three big things that I emphasize is preserving public safety, protecting the rights of crime victims, and of course, holding offenders accountable for their conduct. And that's what we live by every day when we do this work. And so moving on to our budget, just our overview, there's the breakdown of our revenue, our general fund target, our total expenditures. We have 51 positions in this budget, including 21 attorney positions. We did reduce our positions by 2, and that was a vacant receptionist position in our family support program that we just had not used over the years and didn't feel a need for, that we would use it in the future. And so we cut that position. It was vacant at the time. And then also a vacant attorney position was how we ended up being able to pay for the county's investment again in a new evidence management system for our office, Axon Justice, which the commissioners approved in the fall of last year, which leverages, I've talked about it before, I'll talk briefly about it again, it leverages artificial intelligence to help us be more efficient with evidence review. For instance, it will auto transcribe videos for us to make us it easier for us to pinpoint certain parts of the videos we want to go take a quick look at real quick, maybe a defendant's statement or a victim's statement in a multi-hour long body cam sometimes. And also just because of that helps us be more efficient with trial prep. And I think ultimately it will be a cost savings where maybe we would have needed that extra attorney position in the future, and we may not need that in the future as our population size continues to grow. We have 21 attorney positions, 22 if you count myself. Right now we have 17 of those filled with full-time prosecutors. So that leaves us still with 4 open positions. Those provide room for our newer prosecutors, which we have many in the last few years. We had some turnover. And so we've successfully recruited newer prosecutors to fill in those ranks. And this gives us the flexibility to provide room for advancement for them. We found that's the most successful way for us to recruit is bring someone in that's a newer attorney as a new prosecutor and kind of let them work their way up the ranks. Helps with retention and then recruiting others to fill in behind them. Our accomplishments, we still, in the criminal division, we remain very busy, like the sheriff. And so in fiscal year 24-25, we filed 6,448 cases of the 8,759 cases referred to us by law enforcement to review for charges. And you see since fiscal year 17 and 18, kind of how that's ebbed and flowed. And we saw reductions when, of course, the state decriminalized certain drug offenses, and now that those have been recriminalized, we are seeing a rise again and a return to those 17, 18 levels. I think I said this last year, I'll say it again, I think it bears repeating. I think the citizens of Jackson County get a good bang for their buck with the funding that goes, their tax dollars goes to our office. Other offices have less filings and more attorneys. Marion County, which as you know is significantly higher population size than us, they in 2024, for instance, filed 4,992 cases, about 1,500 less than us, and they have 31 attorneys on staff. And the same bears true with other counties like Deschutes and Lane. And then this next graph really just shows that in a different form. This is pending cases by county as of near the end of last year. Kind of a snapshot of what that looked like, and you can see we are almost a carbon copy of Marion County as far as pending cases goes, and then we are pretty higher than Deschutes, which is most comparable to our population size, much higher than Lane, and then pretty comparable again to Clackamas. And only really dwarfed by Washington County, which is significantly greater in population. So we are a very busy office, but I think that means that the citizens are getting a great deal with the tax money that does go to fund our office. This is kind of a snapshot of recently what a day looked like. So we had 145 cases on the docket that our prosecutors had to make appearances on. That day. At that time, we had 266 pending Measure 11 cases, which are mandatory minimum cases. They are, other than murders, our most serious cases we handle in our office. Pending murder cases was 11 at the time. That is down a few from last year. We've been able to be lucky in not having new murders committed, knock on wood, sorry, Sheriff, and been able to resolve some murders. We also had 911 active victim assistance going on at that time on cases. 368 pending expungements. I think that's an area that people don't realize that we handle. So when somebody, after they've been convicted and a number of years go by without them getting back into trouble or having any run-ins with the law, they can apply, depending on the conviction and how much time's passed, they can apply to have that expunged and removed from their record. And so we review those petitions, check their eligibility, object if we have to, and handle those hearings as those requests come in. We also had 2,040 active child support cases at that time that our child support, our family support division was handling. Despite the busyness of our criminal division, we remain active, our prosecutors remain active in participating on interagency teams, which are listed on this slide. Some of these are mandated by statute. So our multidisciplinary child abuse and elder abuse teams focus on the intervention investigation of child abuse and elder abuse in the community. Our child fatality team, they work to understand the circumstances of child deaths and prevent future deaths, tracking those trends and figuring out what the root causes of those are. Our sexual assault response team, SART, meets quarterly with community partners, works to ensure that sexual assault victims are receiving the best quality of services as possible, and works to fill any gaps that we identify or discuss any concerning trends in the community around sexual assault that maybe we're seeing. Level 2 threat assessment team, that is a group with the schools, law enforcement, our office, other community partners that work to prevent school violence. So if there's a concerning threat or concerning behavior from a student that maybe the school is unable to handle, doesn't have the resources to handle, that's where that group kind of steps in, meets, and sees what we can do to hopefully address that behavior before it escalates further. MADU, the Major Assault Death Investigation Unit, that is something that's not mandated by statute, something we've participated in our our county for a long time and investigates homicides and officer-involved shootings. And it's a collaboration of all of our law enforcement agencies, our office, that really assembles on a needed basis. So if a smaller agency has a murder or an officer-involved shooting, that's where we activate that team to come out, pull in bodies from multiple agencies, and make sure we investigate it well and thoroughly, and have the resources available to be able to do so. We also participate on task forces with our law enforcement agencies. So MADGE, the Medford Area Drug and Gang Enforcement, that is, as I'm sure you all will know, that focuses on what would be referred to as hard drugs, mostly fentanyl and meth nowadays, is what they're tracking down, trying to find the sources of it coming into the community and take down those organizations. We also participate on the illegal marijuana enforcement team, IMET. It's focused on illegal marijuana in our area, and as the sheriff mentioned, we've had great success in recent years of reducing that number of grows that was in 2021 had reached a concerning level. We have one attorney signed to both those teams right now that kind of embeds in those teams, goes out to search warrants as needed, and it really is a true member of those teams. SOCET or SOCET, the Southern Oregon Child Exploitation Team, we have 2 prosecutors assigned to that. That team works to identify and apprehend individuals in and or outside our community who look to prey on children. The Serious Traffic Accident Reconstruction Team, STAR, we have multiple prosecutors assigned. They work with law enforcement to investigate serious traffic crashes in our community, usually impaired driving cases, or sometimes distracted drivers. And those are really dedicated individuals. I just want to highlight them real quick. As I know this group knows, those traffic accidents often don't happen 9 to 5. They happen all hours of the day, oftentimes at 2, 3 a.m. Those prosecutors get those calls. They not only advise law enforcement, but they go out to those scenes and they work hand in hand with them by their side, advising them in the moment, discussing any issues. And so they are up sometimes all hours of the night, and sometimes having to then come into work at 8 a.m. Because they have responsibilities on their docket that they need to deal with. And so they are very dedicated, and they, I really do appreciate the kind of dedication they show every day. We also, I don't have it on this side, but we remain active in our treatment court and treatment court programs. We have 2 treatment court programs that we participate in, Wellness Court, which focus on wraparound services for individuals where the root cause is really their mental health. And then our Recovery Opportunity Court, ROC Court, is another partnership with our court where it's wraparound services to individuals where really the root cause of the criminality is their addiction. And they also appear routinely in front of a judge to have that accountability piece along their way in the program. We also have, in partnership with Community Justice, we have our 416 program that provides enhanced supervision for individuals we identify could benefit from that, and maybe by doing that we could avoid them having to go to prison on their cases. We also, in the last few years, created a pre-charge diversion program for younger adults. So those with minimal or no criminal history. It's a partnership with the Resolve Center for Dispute Resolution. And in that program, they really work one-on-one with the Resolve folks to address the root causes of the behavior, recognize the harm they've caused, and hopefully get them to avoid repeating. And that program is very small at the moment, but I'm hopeful that it can be a source of trying to catch people early on in their criminality before they go down farther in that path. And I think it really differs from our other treatment court programs that are really focused on once somebody has built up so much criminal history, then we throw them in those programs, and that might be too late to really affect change. And so I think if we can start affecting change earlier, we might stand a better chance with some individuals at reducing recidivism from them later on. Some other accomplishments move a little bit quickly through these. So we had a major policy change in February of last year that the numbers have reflected has worked. So what we found was there was a lot of trials being set that defense did not intend to go, just as kind of placeholders, which led to further delay and unnecessary work, both for us and the sheriff's office, and having to serve those subpoenas for trial that we would send them. And so with the policy change was that once something's set for trial, we're no longer going to negotiate the case, barring some unforeseen circumstance that maybe we'd be willing to make an exception for. And that has really almost cut our trial settings in half. So from 2,400 in the calendar year 2024 to 1,300 in the calendar year 2025. And I expect that that number will still go down as we continue to enforce that policy. It also had the effect of increasing the number of trials for our prosecutors. So we had 57 trials last year, nearly matching the combined totals for the 2 years prior. We also maintained on those cases that went to trial a 70% conviction rate, which shows we are trying the difficult cases, which I like to see. That's the only conviction rate we really track and care about. I don't want that number to creep too high because it means we're shying away from the hard cases, and we shouldn't be doing that. We should be willing to try the hard ones and believe in those as well. We increase transparency to the public, so I like to tell my people that we can't expect the public to know or understand what we're doing if we don't explain it to them. If we don't take the time to do that, we can't expect that in return. And so we really tried to increase the number of press releases to explain why we reach certain resolutions and make sure we're explaining the why to people along with announcing what happened. And so we had 41, which matches the totals for the last 2 years prior to that. We're still dealing with the public defense crisis. And so you'll see these are where our unrepresented individuals from May of 2025 until March of 2026. You'll see a red line there with a significant drop. And so right now we have 126 that are waiting for an attorney. The significant drop after the red line was a result of a Supreme Court decision or an appellate court decision, State v. Roberts, in February of this year, which mandated dismissal if somebody didn't have an attorney for 60 or 90 consecutive days on their case. So that's partly the reason for the reduction. We are reviewing those cases that get dismissed if we can refile, especially if they're victim cases or concerning threats to public safety like DUIs. We are refiling those if we can. So I expect that number to kind of ebb and flow, but I do expect it to continue to drop. As you'll see, we are already on a downward trajectory, and that was really the result of, in April of 25, we implemented in partnership with some of our defense bar and the court an early disposition program to really start targeting lower level cases at arraignment and try to resolve those before somebody got an attorney or wanted an attorney on their case. And we were in the first 6 months of that program, we resolved 150 or more than 150 cases at that stage. And so that really added from those cases ending up in the backlog. But additionally, there's just been more attorneys recruited to our area, and they've had an increase in capacity that way. So we've seen those numbers dropping, and I really hope that by next year I can report even lower numbers to you, and hopefully that the crisis will finally be over, because we are entering year 4 of it. These are our prosecution funding sources. You can see we're primarily funded through the general fund. We do have some grant funding for IMET and our 416 program that we partner with the Jackson County Community Justice, and we also have an interagency agreement with HHS to handle mental health cases and represent them in civil commitments. And then we have fees, which is really our discovery fees of about $265,000 that we're able to collect for providing discovery. Accomplishments in our family support program, real quickly, is we continue to collect over $8 million for in child support for local families. We've continued to maintain strong collection rates that are stronger than the state agencies that are responsible for cases. So overall, we have 69% collection rate, and then really importantly, collection rate on cases with back child support is at 72%, and that maintains consistent with past years. Our family support program differs from criminal division and victim services that it's primarily funded with federal and state funding. I promise I won't be too much longer. And really, the general fund only contributes $132,000 to that program, only 19%. Our victims assistance program helped more than 4,300 victims of crime, secured restitution orders of more than $4.5 million in the last year, and importantly, collected 23,000 of that prior to sentencing. So getting that money in the hands of victims before a defendant has been sentenced, and had a little bit more incentive to pay that restitution because it can become difficult to collect once the case is done. So we always like to see that number us collecting prior to sentencing. And then this is a breakdown in our victim assistance funding. You can see that it is over half funded with grants and fees, which primarily is VOCA funding, Victims of Crime Act funding, that is federal funding that passes through the state. We receive $456,000 with the fees counted. That funding is always in flux. There was a brief period in the last year where we thought we weren't going to receive that funding, and we had to have serious conversations about whether or not we needed to lay off staff. We decided, and luckily, Danny worked with us on that, of allowing us to kind of wait and see what happened. We ended up getting the funding, didn't have to lay off any staff. But if we lost that funding, it would require us to lay off three to four of our victim assistance program staff, which represents half the program. And so it'd be a significant hit. And that work of victim contact, working with victims, would fall back on the prosecutors. And so, as I covered before, they're already very busy handling their caseloads, and so that would be an additional burden on them. And likely we wouldn't do as good of a job in that area, that important area of victim assistance, if we lost that funding. And that's all I have. I'm sorry for going a little bit over. Thank you for allowing me to talk about the work we do, and I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Questions? Yeah, Rick?
Just looking at early on,
Yeah.
the chart on the cases referred versus cases filed, looks like the cases referred went up significantly between 23, 24, 24, 25, but the delta between cases referred and cases filed also increased significantly beyond what it had been historically. Is there something that you could point to indicate what that was due to, or explanation of any kind?
Not right now. I'm happy to follow up on that and get back to you
Okay.
if there's an answer for that. I think, as you can kind of see, I think that delta has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. There are multiple reasons why we might not file a case. The vast majority of the time, it's because we don't believe we have the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt to be able to prove it if it goes to trial, which is the standard we used for whether or not we should file the case. But I will say, as the public defense crisis has raged on, and we've looked for ways to lower that backlog and really try to make sure on the important case, they're all important, but the victim cases, the serious cases, that we're getting attorneys in time, and those cases aren't being delayed or now dismissed. With lower level cases, we have decided, when somebody has maybe 4 criminal trespasses pending with us or 5 DOCs pending with us, and they pick up another disorderly conduct DOC, that maybe we don't file that 5th one, and we just look to maybe revoke their release, put them back into jail, accomplish maybe the same result we would have gotten out of that DOC and maybe more, to not have that case added to the backlog, if that makes sense, and try to save that capacity for the more serious cases. So that might be part of it, but without really digging in deep, I can't say for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Over here, anything? Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
All right, next we have community justice. Morning, Kiki.
Good morning.
Kiki, I think you have 20 minutes with us.
I will do my best to make
Thank
it less
you.
than that. All right, well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present the Jackson County Community Justice recommended budget this morning. Where am I pointing to? Okay. Jackson County Community Justice is made up of 3 services: adult services, also known as parole and probation, juvenile services, and our transition center. We embrace our core values of integrity, trust, consistency, respect, and teamwork. Those aren't just values that we put on a wall or the back of a business card. That's how we operate within the community every single day. We have a variety of funding sources. Our funding comes from many grants and fees at 30%. Those include things like the Oregon Youth Authority, our Behavioral Residential Services Reimbursement Program, our Youth Development Council, Justice Reinvestment Program dollars, opioid settlement funding, and bed rentals at our transition center, as well as other funding sources. We get about 34% of our funding from the Community Corrections Act. That funding is allocated to us every biennium from the state legislature. And then we have 36% of our funding coming from the county general fund. The general fund primarily funds our juvenile services budget at about 76% and our transition center at about 30%. As one would expect, the majority of our funding is expended in personnel services. We did experience reduction in our overall funding from the state because the state failed to fund us at our cost study level and instead chose to fund us at our current service level. It's frustrating. This resulted in a difference in this year's budget, and that includes a reduction of 10.5 positions within community justice. Once we learned that the state legislature was not going to fund us at the cost it takes to do business, we did not fill those positions, so there's no people in those positions. We're just reducing those actual positions without layoff. This budget not only reflects a reduction in our personnel services, it also includes reductions in other services that we contract with, including a reduction in sex offender treatment at both our adult and juvenile services. It includes a reduction in our polygraph examination services, a reduction in our peer service contracts, and we took a reduction in our training budget. This results in a total overall personnel positions this time of 143.63. That represents that 10.5 reduction that I just mentioned. I just want to say that our staff are highly trained. They're very professional in the community. They're dedicated. We have 2 24/7 facilities that we run, both at juvenile services with our detention and residential, as well as our 24/7 facility at the transition center. Our parole and probation officers are on, receive calls at a variety of times. So I just really want to shout out how impressive it is that we have such a professional group of people dedicated to Jackson County. Talk a little bit about these adults on supervision. You heard the sheriff and the district attorney talk about the group of folks that they deal with. When they're all finished, they come to us and they're placed on probation or parole or post-prison supervision. And we're responsible for the care and supervision of just over 1,900 adults in Jackson County. And our caseloads are made up of a variety of crimes, and I've listed some of those types of crimes there, as well as the demographics. Our office has specialty caseloads where we ensure that we're providing the best and most up-to-date supervision practices for those specialty caseloads. That includes specialized academy and training for our domestic violence officers, our sex offender treatment officers, as well as our gender responsive unit. We are also situated by geographics. We have a North County and a South County probation officer. We have a probation officer that's dedicated to our ROC, our Recovery Opportunity Court, as well as Wellness Court. We have 2 officers dedicated to our 416. That's our prison diversion program that we work in conjunction with the district attorney's office on. And as you can tell from our chart, drug cases are very much part of the work that we do every day. In fact, we currently have 255 drug enforced misdemeanors cases on our caseload. That does not include any drug enforced misdemeanor cases that have an accompanying additional crime. So they're solely under supervision because of drug crimes. That's been a significant increase since September 1st of 2024 when drug offenses were recriminalized. We also monitor 2,400 individuals in our community for driving under the influence of intoxicants. We provide home detention and community service work, both as alternatives to incarceration and as sanctions. I really think it's important to call out the risk level. You saw lots of comparisons earlier this morning with our district attorney's office and the sheriff talking about our comparisons to other counties. Our county continues to experience a very high-risk population. Jackson County has 74 fewer high-risk adults on supervision than Multnomah County. Multnomah County has 2,000 more adults on supervision than Jackson. We have a very high-risk population, and that results in a lot of work for our teams. It's significant. This requires more contact, more intensive supervision. It results in us responding to higher risk violation behavior within our community. Much of the violation that we encounter is found in our home visits and our field work. It is not uncommon for us to encounter drugs, ounces and pounds of drugs when we're out in the field working, guns and other weapons. And we also have located lots of stolen property. We use alternatives to incarceration when available, and we have significant use of the Jackson County Jail. Community Corrections Act funding provides just about $1.8 million a year for the Jackson County Jail. Let's go into our youth on supervision. Again, same chart talking about the offenses that we provide supervision over. We have 10 probation officers at Juvenile Services. They provide probation, diversion, and intake services. And our officers work very closely with parents and guardians, community partners, the schools, the courts, community resources, and others to make sure that we're providing a holistic approach to the supervision of that youth in our community. It's just not the youth, it's all of those involved with the youth. We had 550 referrals to Juvenile Services in 2025, with 210 youth being placed on diversion or probation services. And we continue to see, as you can see from that graph, an increase in our assaults in the community, and more specifically, our female youth are engaging in more assaultive behavior. At both adult and juvenile services, our probation officers conduct risk and need assessments. They identify criminogenic risk factors. Those are the factors that contribute to criminality. They develop case plans. They engage in cognitive behavioral treatment and intervention. They connect individuals with services in the community. They conduct home visits, attend court, write reports, and many other activities within the community. In addition to probation, diversion, and intake, we also have juvenile detention. That's that top photo. At juvenile detention, we have a 16-bed male and female pod, and we have a residential treatment program called Barriers to Bridges. We had 200 intakes in detention in 2025, and we had 26 youth enrolled in our 6-month behavioral residential services program. We provide substance use disorder, mental health services, provide peer supports. We offer a 5-day-a-week education program in both residential and detention. We have an incredible career technical classroom where youth are able to participate in screen printing, woodworking, and a number of other vocational activities. They receive credit for these activities through the Medford School District. And we did have one youth graduate from high school in detention, so that was kind of a nice thing for us to be able to celebrate. We do anticipate an increase in our behavioral residential service reimbursement rate this time as we worked with the Oregon Health Authority, too many acronyms, and Department of Human Services to ensure that our reimbursement rates were correct and accurate. We also entered into an agreement with the Oregon Youth Authority. We now rent space to the Oregon Youth Authority for 2 beds in our residential program. And we anticipate an increase in our expunction rate. You heard the sheriff and the district attorney talk about that as well. At Juvenile Services, they've added many crimes that are now eligible to be expunged while the youth, after the youth completes their services with us. And as the sheriff outlined, we also experienced an increase in juvenile detention specific to our medical services. Our transition center, this is the county's largest investment in the unhoused population. In 2025, we provided 17,635 bed days. And this is a population that would have otherwise been unhoused in our community. They would have been on the greenway, on the streets, on our sidewalks, going from couch to couch and couch surfing. In addition, we have the ability to move adults in custody from the jail to the transition center, so they are able to engage in additional services and programming to help with a smoother transition back into the community. We also have a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, Federal Pretrial, Federal Probation, the City of Medford Municipal Court, and the Sheriff's Office through deflection, where we are able to rent out some of our transitional housing beds, and that is an income for community justice. Our transition center programs continue to expand. We provide wraparound on-site supports for substance use treatment, medication for opioid use disorder, mental health, etc. We assign each person coming out to the transitional center that's eligible up for the Oregon Health Plan. And we recently have partnered with La Clinica to provide physical and dental services for our population at the transition center. That middle picture is one of our transitional care programs, or TCP. We have 2 residential on-site programs that provide 5.5-month-long services. These programs are gender-specific and co-facilitated with the Addictions Recovery Center. That first photo you see is our work crews. The work crews are dispatched from the transition center, and this year we're entering into an agreement with Roads and Parks where they will fund 1 full-time work crew coordinator that can be dedicated to the Roads and Parks Department. And lastly, the next branch of our transition center is located in the jail, and that's our Jail Release Resource Program. We're incredibly proud of this program. This is where we have 2 community justice officers stationed in the jail and paired with deputies. They conduct needs assessments, and then they identify needs of those in custody and start pairing the adults in custody with need services while incarcerated and then as they're leaving incarceration. I just really would like to call out this program started on May 5th of 2024. It's funded through multiple sources, including Justice Reinvestment Program, opioid settlement dollars, and a number of other resources. In 2025, at the end of December 2025, we had 964 participants. They're all voluntary. And almost half have not returned to custody since participating and being connected to these services. That's a fairly important statistic. We're expanding housing. In the 2025 legislative session, Representative Marsh worked with Jackson County, and she was able to secure a $1 million capital construction project funding. This project will help us build a step out program, a housing program, which we hope will include 12 tiny homes. We're hoping to place that in the location of the current animal shelter. That's what those yellow arrows are pointing to. And there's a match to that funding of $200,000 that will come from Community Corrections Act funding, so we are not anticipating any general fund going into this project. Our work cannot be done alone. We don't have the ability to operate in silos, and so I really want to call out our relationships with Jackson County partners, specifically Health and Human Services, the Sheriff, and our District Attorney's Office. Without those core partners being in place, the foundation for the incredible work that's done in our county would not be possible. Also, we partner with many of the other folks that are listed here at both our juvenile, adult, and our juvenile and transition center, as well as adult services. We're also partner with several people as far as participating in work groups. We're on the MADGE Oversight Committee. We participate in the multidisciplinary teams. We have trainers within our Juvenile Services Department that train statewide as well as at Adult Services. So we try to really engage our folks to be healthy for the state, not just Jackson County. Quick glance back. In 2025, we brought on a new background program. This helped us onboard employees much quicker, as well as every person that provides service in one of our facilities goes through an extensive background. And that's important because we're working with one of the most vulnerable populations in our community. This background program has sped up our process from about 90 days to about 30 to 45 days in order to get a person onboarded. We continue to expand our presence in the field with our parole and probation officers. Significantly, we were able to reduce our vacancies at Juvenile Services, and I'm very proud of the fact that we were incredibly creative in trying to fill those vacancies. And we are in the process of launching a new needs assessment. This is going to help us really capture the work that we're doing at the transition center. We do a lot of work there, but we've not really been able to show data to support that. So we're excited about that opportunity. Looking forward, we're looking for alternatives to our medical services at Juvenile. As we continue to see increase, I think our increase was just almost $40,000 this fiscal year for medical services. So we're really exploring other opportunities. We are preparing for the 27-29 biennium and the reductions that we anticipate we're going to see from the state in funding in many of our grants, as well as our Community Corrections Act funding. We're in the process of identifying a jail release resource program case management system so we can increase the data collection that we are currently gathering. And most importantly, we're just going to continue to focus on our foundation and our core services. Tried to whip through that very quickly, so I would welcome any questions.
Yeah. Questions? Yeah, Danny?
I just want to clarify one thing, and I will say, Kiki probably misspoke. We don't actually make an income from contracts with the Transition Center. We're not allowed to charge more than the actual daily cost, so we do generate a revenue, but we don't make an income.
I did misspeak. I apologize.
You're forgiven.
Thank you.
What else? Anybody else? No? Okay. Thank you, Kiki.
Thank you.
It's now time for public comment. Before I invite people up, committee members, with your consensus, I would restrict comments to 3 minutes. Does anybody have any concerns about that? No? Everybody okay? I will ask our timekeeper to keep everybody to 3 minutes. For the first time, I believe, we have folks who may be watching us on Zoom. So those of you who are watching us on Zoom, if you use the raise your hand function, staff will recognize you, and after we hear folks who are physically present in this auditorium, we will then turn to comments from folks on Zoom. So I see that we have somebody who wants to come forward, and before you do, I just want to state that we ask that all comments are relevant to this committee, which is the Budget Committee. We are not here to function around other issues other than those that are relevant to the budget. So with that, if you'd come forward and state your name and address.
Thank you. I've practiced this for 5 minutes. There's something
Oh.
at the end you're going to want to know, but let's see how it goes. My name is Laura Ahern, 8595 Upper Applegate. Oregon's Constitution guarantees the right of Jackson County's voters to change local law through the initiative process. Over 11,000 of your constituents signed petitions to put Measure 15226 on the May 2024 ballot. The title, written by the district attorney, accurately described the measure: decrease the salaries of Jackson County commissioners. In the election, 36,082 voters, 63.4%, said yes to what the text that was actually in the ballot said. Section 24 of the Charter of Jackson County, Oregon is amended. Nothing in the wording suggested that this unequivocal delegation was conditional on anything other than the normal majority vote. Nothing provided that Measure 15226 could somehow self-destruct. Here's a simple test. How would you write a law if you actually intended it to be contingent? Certainly not how the measure was actually written. The district attorney got it right in her question and summary in the voter's pamphlet. As the top elected lawyer, it was her responsibility to describe the measure concisely and impartially. And she did, identifying no contingencies. What a handful of individuals may have erroneously thought or said doesn't matter. We have to read the official words that were presented to all voters in the same format and on even footing. Measure 15226 passed, and it is in our charter. This amendment provides the most important, indeed controlling consideration for the elected officials salary committee and this budget committee in proposing commissioners' salaries in 2027. The appointed members are public officials, I'm trying to get to that three, subject to Oregon's governmental ethics laws. Service as a public official is a public trust. Public officials should put loyalty to the highest ethical standards above loyalty to persons or political party. When the EOSC meets today, I trust you will fulfill your duty to serve as independent watchdogs on behalf of all county residents ever conscious of this public trust. Someone might suggest to you, don't worry, you can just ignore Measure 15226, because we'll argue it is preempted by a state statute. Ms. Sefcik, you are already on record promoting this approach. First, it is contrary to the prevailing governing philosophy of those in power in this county to concede, Salem says so, thus we have no choice. Second, there is no conflict. The statute that's been suggested does not preclude you from honoring the decision of your voters. It lists possible issues for consideration, but in no way requires you to ignore others, and indeed you do consider other factors. Could I please continue? I'm pretty close.
Quickly.
The legislature has not dictated that you adopt a proposal over the decision of the citizens. Third, importantly, we are talking about the constitutional power retained by the people. There's a whole paragraph there. I'll leave that with your clerks. You can just read that and see what backs up that important point. Ms. Sefcik, I must note your financial investment in opposing the measure. You wrote and apparently paid the $400 fee for a statement in the voter's pamphlet. Although you placed your argument in the section regarding Measure 15225, you in fact spent a third of your space challenging Measure 15226. You paid $1,000 to the Stop Bigger Government PAC. Does this pose an actual or potential conflict of interest under ORS 244? Should you recuse yourself? I note these concerns and preserve the right of voters to pursue these questions should it be necessary. There's a little bit more, but I'll leave that for you in writing.
Great. Thank you very much. Do we have any Zoom hands?
Mr. Chair, there's no one on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay. Well then, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to make public comment? I don't see anybody indicating that, so we will take a break and reconvene at 11:05.
Good morning. Absolutely. Not going nowhere without you. All right. Okay.
Are we good? Okay, Joe, you may start. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm going to run through some slides quickly on the Jackson County Justice Court. First is our projection for fiscal year 25-26. You'll see it's a decline. We had a lot more cases in 2024. Those were mostly from our city municipal partners. And depending on what the economy does over the next year, that could also impact that projection. So I'm here to warn you that that may, even at a lower level, be an optimistic projection. We've been closer to 1.3 million over prior 4 fiscal years since the pandemic. This slide shows our percentage breakdown of what our collection agency brings to us, and the voluntary payment portion with the line there from 24 to 25, you can see, has increased. We do try to provide incentives for citizens to make good on their obligation to pay fines and clear suspensions. This is revenue by quarter. We always see a bump in the second quarter. That is one thing that our collection agency does very well. They do tax offset, or citizens have refunds. They want to clear their holds, driver's license holds. And it's one of the reasons we've remained with this collection agency, although the percentage of accounts assigned collected has been decreasing over the year. Total cases are down in the last calendar year. If you look at the period from 2020 to 2023, we're usually at an average about 12,000 per year. We did get an increase in 2024 from municipalities. Cases per clerk we track as a performance measure. Obviously, as cases go down, cases per clerk go down, but we think that our small staff of 3 clerks is quite efficient in processing the cases that we do have. The sheriff has left the building, but you can see that citations from the sheriff's office have declined over the last year by some 25%. I know he's dealing with, just bodies and time to apply to traffic enforcement. That's a large part of, say, 50% of where our citations come from. I think I showed you this slide at the budget interview. Average of 30 fatalities in the county in the years 2022 to 2025. If you look back over a longer period of time, 10 years ago or so, we were in the teens. So what portion of this may be from changed driving habits from pandemic, and what portion may be from enforcement. And basically, we talk about the 3 E's, education, engineering, and enforcement, and how that may affect fatalities, traffic fatalities in the county. This slide just breaks out state and local citations. Again, both increased in 2024. This past year, local enforcement also has declined, but you can see back the delta from 2023 to 2024, local citations almost doubled for us. This is another breakout where you can see trends. Jacksonville and the state weighmaster have increased the amount of our caseload over the last 2 calendar years. Central Point and Phoenix are down. Again, this is a factor of enforcement. And then finally, way ahead of schedule, part of what we do is traffic school diversions. Again, that's the educational component of the 3 E's. We particularly make that available for young drivers. So you get one mistake, and particularly since your moving violations, your driving record is going to affect insurance premiums for the family. That's a point we get to emphasize with our younger drivers. That's really all I have for you this morning, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Questions?
I've got one.
Yeah.
The cities use cameras for citations. The county doesn't have any at all? Could we have them?
There was a change in the law to allow all cities, I believe, and I don't know, I think, if I'm getting this right, there may be a prohibition for counties. I can't remember why that is. Need a legal mind on that. But it's just the city of Medford has gone primarily to photo radar, photo red light enforcement. They're doing, I want to say 30,000 citations a year. Light goes off 60,000 times, but only 30,000. They reviewed them to make sure it's an accurate picture, etc. But it affects us sometimes because with that volume, you could get a photo citation that's mailed to you if you didn't change your address. With the DMV, you're going to be suspended for failure to appear in the Medford Municipal Court. They may not know about that until the sheriff deputy cites them for driving while suspended. So it does create issues that we often have to work through, but I don't think that's available for the county.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Development Services. Morning, Ted.
Good morning.
I'm thinking that we have, how much time set for you? 20 minutes, right? Okay, thank you.
That's a goal.
Yeah.
A wise man last week told me to make sure I make that goal, so I will.
Ted,
Yes.
it's a requirement.
Yeah.
It's not a goal, it's a requirement.
All right. All right, let's go. The clock's going. So, good morning, Chair Morris, members of the Budget Committee. Ted Zook, Development Services Director. I will be presenting this portion of your program, and I have 19 minutes and 46 seconds left. So let's start with the revenue. $6.7 million budget. That's about $20,000 less than last year's budget. We get 47% from fees and permits, 27% from the community development fee. The community development fee is a fee that was put in place in 2003. It's 1.9% of the valuation of a property up to $1 million, but it's capped at $16,500. It was put in place as a user fee, so that not as much general fund money was coming to development services, and it was more proportional to the users as a service. We do get 20% of our budget from the general fund, 3% from transfers. The one is the White City Enhanced Enforcement. That is for enhanced code enforcement in the White City area because they have more characteristics of a city. The other is for a half of an FTE from Roads Department, and that's for transportation planning. And then 3% from grants, one from the IMEG, that's the illegal marijuana market enforcement grant, and BRIC, which is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant. So next is our expenses. As you'd imagine, same budget, 6.7 million, based on what our revenue is going to be. Again, $20,000 less than last year. To be at that goal, we had about a 10% reduction in what our building division is for our revenue. We will be removing one position, construction inspector position, a full-time position. That's where the money was, the deficit was, and that's where we're taking a position. The other is in vacant administrative assistant position that was not filled. So with most your budgets you see here, 70%, 73% is our personnel services, 16% chargebacks, 11% is that operating portion. For our department, for our FTEs, that means that we went from 37 FTEs down to 35. That aligns again with the reduction in building revenue that we're projecting. We also did remove the allowance for extra help positions, and we also reduced our overtime budget. And the building budget, I might mention, is 100% fee-based, so we do not get general fund money out of that. On the customer interactions, these are the phone calls, emails, repeat customers. 45,000 2024, that's the calendar year, and 45,000 in 2025. So that's a lot of customers every year, and it's staying steady. So we still do have that workload of all the customers. One of the things that we're seeing is that projects are a little smaller than they used to be, but we still have a lot of projects. The other part is that 2 years ago, Oregon Building Codes divisions, which host our software, took away the ability for people to actually call in on a line. You can still do it, the internet, fax, come in person, but the phone calls, there was no automated system for it anymore, and now they're calling us. Customer feedback, I just wanted to add this. I'm not going to read all these to you, but they're all glowing, positive reviews of our department. I have to say, as a regulatory department, that we actually get people that say we're doing a good job. I think that says a lot. I mean, of course, we do get complaints, but most of our comment cards are pretty good. And some of these, a portion of them, probably about 10%, people actually put a postage stamp on a card and mail it to us. So the fact that they paid money to come and say good things about us, I'm very impressed and proud of our staff on that. On building, you see again, revenue is all from permits and fees. That little red sliver that you see there, that is the BRIC grant funding. We did have other BRIC grant funding, but some of that was taken away. We're in the process that some of that might be able to get reinstated for other years. Obviously, it's not going to be in our budget if we don't know we're going to get it, but we're working towards that end. And what you see, that red sliver up there, is a carryover from one that we already had. I'd also like to just point out that the fire hardening grant program is done now, but during that program we had $2.5 million that we gave out to 597 fire survivors. Performance, you'll see that our plan reviews 22-23 was at 83%, at 72% now. I just wanted to point that out because anytime there's a decrease, anybody's going to ask about that. We had a lot of extra staffing that was third-party staffing that we got from grant money, and that was to help the fire survivors, and that was finishing up those years. But you also take a look at the last bar down there, the permit processing time, 13 days down to 5. So we are steadily increasing. 23-24, we had 4,609 permits. In 24-25, we had 4,505. Down some, but the workload is still there.
Ted, I got to interrupt you just because
Sure.
you have a new person on the budget committee. Those are not the statutory timelines. We do way better than the statutory timelines. That's what he's trying to point out here. Not that we got worse in our own performance evaluation measurement, but we still far exceed the state requirements.
Yep. We'd actually do, I don't know what happened there. We'd actually do better. We can never get 100%. And the 100% we don't get because there's things like vacations, bad weather, whatever. So we are on code enforcement. 2% budget increase. The IMED funding did go down, but 67% comes out of the general fund. 7% out of the community development fee. I do want to point out that 5% comes from fees and fines. We are voluntary, compliance. Our mission is not to go out and fine people, and that 5% is reflective of that part. There's also, of course, some that you're never going to collect on. For where code enforcement is at, after we lost a couple of the positions for the IMEG funding, you'll see that our number of cases per officer went from 341 to 489. We're looking to get that back down again, but the cannabis cases back in 22, 23 were 643, and they're down to 130 now. Cannabis markets has changed. The better enforcement, the grant money, it was all helping. But take a look at the caseload, and we actually went out from 1,237 cases to 1,403 from the last fiscal year. So the workload is still there. It seems shifting priorities. We're back to normal stuff, if you will, like things like solid waste again and livability issues. On comprehensive planning, a modest 3% budget increase. 62% of the budget comes from community development fee, 22% from general fund. As you'd expect, there's not a lot of fees involved in comp planning. It's usually that long-range planning that doesn't have an application fee goes with it. On current planning, 15% general fund, 33% from the fees, and again, 52% from the community development fee. It's doing its job. That's a 4% increase in our budget, also modest again. We took a look from July to February of the 24-25 fiscal year, and we had 876 planning cases. That same period for the year that we're in now is like 937. So again, more applications, slightly more, but also smaller projects. I'm not there yet. For the planning performance measures, this again, as Danny was saying, these are internal performance measures. Our performance measures are 120 days inside of UGB and 150 days outside of UGB. You'll see that we have 20, 60, and 90 as our internal performance, depending on how complicated those cases are. We're now fully staffed, and this staff is now trained, and you can see it in these numbers. From 23, 24 on the type 1 cases, of which there's no statutory requirement that they can take as long as they want. It went from 59 to 68%. And for the type 2, which is under that 120, 150 day shot clock, went from 19 to 36, and we're expecting it to be at 59 now. So definite improvement. Has to do with staffing and having trained staffing, and we have an excellent staff. I have 9 minutes left, and I could go on and on about how proud I am of our department, but I will leave it there, and that will end my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Rick?
Okay, so building inspections, you're anticipating 99.8% in less than 24 hours even next year, and that's with reducing the staff one full building inspector. I mean, is that realistic? Is that, I know you said that revenues are down and the activity's down, but.
Realistic, because the statutory timeline is 48 hours.
Yeah.
In the 24 hours, we can generally get there if we get them in the morning. I'm hoping it's realistic, put it that way.
Okay, yeah.
A couple things Ted didn't mention, but the budget will account for it in a different process, which is the fee setting process. We'll be addressing the building fees. We haven't increased those for
13 years.
13 years.
There was,
So we will be proceeding with a proposal to make some increases now. And
let me give you a caveat on it though, so I don't, it was 13 years since the last time that we increased the building fees, but last year we did increase just the structural only 5%. And that was because we didn't want to go and just raise all fees all at the same time in 1 year. It does look like we're probably going to have to increase some more, and then there's electrical, mechanical, and plumbing. That'll probably be part of it.
we did explain this. You may not remember this, but we did explain this process last year. I'm letting the rest of the budget committee members know how that gap is going to partially be filled. Well, it's not just a staff reduction, it's also a fee increase, and it's supported by the actual cost. We just didn't want to implement a large increase all at once, so we spread it out. We probably shouldn't have waited 13 years to do an increase, honestly, but the, what's it called?
The valuation tables.
The valuation table, which we don't set outside of our control, has increased because the cost of construction and value of materials has increased. So that's increased our costs over time without increasing our fees, or increased our revenue over time without increasing our fees.
Yes.
Just one other thing too, on the residential plan review within 10 days, you said in 22-23 it was 83% because of extra staff we received because of the fire
Yes.
recovery. Historically, before that, then we were closer to the numbers because obviously people see a reduction like that and it's a little bit concerning. But prior to the fire and the extra staff, we were more in line with the numbers of 72, 75%. Is that
That's
accurate?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me do say, and I'm just helping Ted out here a little bit, that is an internal performance measure, not a number people see. And also, being within that percentage depends on people getting us everything we need to do a plan review. So the reason why we often don't do better than 70 or 80% is people submit incomplete plans for review, and then we have to extend the time period to get them to get us the information we need to approve it. It's not because necessarily we're short-staffed or not even meeting our internal performance measure for things that are in our control.
Well, and that's, obviously our concern and our concern for our clients, customers, is that we do everything we can to get that number down and to keep it at as high a percentage within 10 days as possible. And that was what my question really was. I know there's things that beyond our control, and the individual client dictates those timelines in certain cases, but
No.
that we're doing all we can is.
Absolutely. My background before coming to work for the county was in construction, and time is money. We are very, very cognizant of that.
I know you understand that for sure.
So Danny, going back to the raising fees, I know that there's a very specific process for the county to go through the proposal of raising fees. It's very data-driven. I wonder if you could talk about that very quickly, just for the general public, to get a sense of how that process works. And then my follow-up question to that would be, when fees are adjusted through that process, will they go into effect for this coming budget year or for the following budget year?
Yeah, so there's Oregon laws that drive that we can set fees twice a year. We're required to hold a public hearing when we set a new fee or change a fee or increase a fee. We used to have a county ordinance that conflicted with state law. We just follow state law now. We typically only set fees once a year. The twice a year thing is meant for if we get a really high inflationary period or we get significant deflation, we can come back and visit those. But typically in my career here, we've not set it more than once a year. We've occasionally made some changes in some specific fees twice. The fee setting process is done an internal evaluation where we do time studies. We take into account the proportionate share of materials and supplies, the staff positions required to complete whatever the task is, the number of hours that or time that staff's assigned to that task. We cost that out. We do basically a complete cost accounting. We're only allowed to charge in non-enterprise funds what it actually costs us, so we can't charge more than it costs us for something. And we have had over the life of our fee schedule been challenged in court. We've prevailed every time because we're able to have that support for the fee setting system, and the public does have the opportunity to comment and weigh in on that. And the board also reviews those prior to coming to a public hearing and provides input and direction to staff as well. That's the short version of it.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I think that's good for the public to hear.
If I could just add on to that, though, the building fees also have a added layer where we have to notice the state, and then the state will notice that we have our local hearings. So there's an opportunity for people in both stages to comment.
Okay. Anything else for Ted? No? Thank you, Ted.
Thank you.
All right, next we have information technology. Trinity Todd. Morning, Trinity.
Good morning.
I understand your department is without a permanent director right now,
That is correct.
and that you've been tapped to come forward and present information technology's budget to us.
That is correct.
Okay, we're not near as intimidating as we look. And we welcome you.
Thank you.
Yes. And I believe we have 10 minutes allocated for your presentation.
All right. Good morning, committee members. My name is Trinity Todd, and I'm with the Information Technology Department. I'm going to be presenting our fiscal year 26-27 budget to you guys. So first, I wanted to talk about the two different programs that we have in IT. The first is our Technology Replacement Fund, or TRF. This program works by collecting funds over the lifetime of the technology. This provides stable replacement funding and avoids peaks and valleys. Examples of expenses that would be in the TRF are computers, as well as capital technology, such as server replacements. The other side of that same coin is our IT services program. This program can be broken down into 3 teams. Operations, which includes our network and infrastructure support, which is the backbone of our IT department. We've also got desktop support. They're the people that you call if you have any issues. We've got applications, who do development and maintenance on software, both custom and vendor supplied, as well as our geographical information services. And we've got communications, who run our telephone and mobile devices programs. Altogether, this makes up the day-to-day operations of IT. IT revenue sources can be broken down into 2 different categories. About 8% of IT's revenue comes from outside sources such as GIS land transaction fees, map and data sales. The remaining 92% are internal charges to other departments. These internal charges are allocated by departments that receive the benefit of the service whenever possible. So we can break that down further. About 30% of that 92 is direct charges to specific departments. An example of a charge like that would be something like an application that is developed specifically for one department. That department would pay for that application in full. Another example of something that is a direct charge would be something like, say, a department has 5% of the total amount of storage of data. That department would pay 5% of the fees IT incurs in order to run data storage. The remaining 62% of our revenue come from indirect charges. These are shared services such as our phone, email, websites, etc. These are allocated proportionally, either by PC or employee count, whichever is most appropriate for the services provided. At its heart, IT is a service department, and our customers are Jackson County employees. So with that, customer satisfaction is one of the best ways we have for measuring performance and seeing how we're doing as a department. Every year, IT sends out a survey, and it includes these 2 statements. In general, the IT department does a good job of meeting my business needs, and in general, the IT department responds quickly to our requests. If people indicate that they agree, we consider them satisfied. If they respond neutral or disagree, we consider them dissatisfied. We add all this together in order to create our satisfaction percent. We've set an acceptable level at 85%, but our true goal is 95%. So over the last 3 years, we have either met or exceeded that acceptable or that goal level. We've always hit at least acceptable. So for this current fiscal year, we've completed our desktop migration to Windows 11. That was a large undertaking, not just for IT, but for all Jackson County employees. And I did want to take just a moment to thank all of the employees for their time and patience with that large project. We've also increased our cybersecurity program investments. That includes a new password management system. We've started getting ready for our new telephone system. We've maintained strategic software like our ERP, our document management system, and our GIS software. And we've developed and maintained custom application solutions for county departments. Next year, we plan to migrate to our new telephone system. We're going to implement additional M365 applications such as Teams. We're going to continue to increase our cybersecurity program maturity. And we're going to improve ADA accessibility for public-facing applications such as our public website. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions?
Short and sweet, hopefully.
Anybody?
No,
No, thank you, Trinity. You did a great job.
One
Thank you.
observation is
Oh,
all that,
sorry.
IT lives up to expectations and everything they do for me in the IT world,
Fantastic.
but also I want to say that you lived up to your expectations about having the flashiest presentation. with
Oh,
all
good.
the Animated transitions. That
I was pretty proud of that
yeah.
PowerPoint, I'll
You
admit.
set the bar a little higher for the other departments. I'll
Oh,
just say that.
good. I like to hear that.
Thank you, Trinity.
Thank you.
I am.
Yeah.
Flexing them.
All right, we're back to public comment. Again, I would request that anybody who has comments would keep them relevant to this committee, being the county's budget. Do we have anybody in the audience that would like to come forward? Okay, do we have anybody on Zoom who's raised their hand?
Mr. Chair, there's no one on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay, then we are going to, in a moment, recess for lunch. I would like to comment that at noon, the Elected Officials Salary Committee will meet in room 214. For the public's information, the Elected Officials Salary Committee is made up of the 3 lay members of this committee, which Len Barton, April Sevick, and myself. We will meet and come forward ultimately with a recommendation to this full committee on Thursday for the salary structures for elected officials. Again, at noon in room 214. With that, we will recess for lunch and be back at 1:30.
Under promise and over deliver.
All right, we're ready to reconvene, and first up is County Counsel. Joel, nice to see you again.
Thank you, Chair Morris and members of the Budget Committee. Introduction, my name is Joel Benton. I am County Counsel amongst many other hats I wear, but for the purposes of this presentation, I'm County Counsel for Jackson County, which means that I am the head attorney for the county and represent the county and advise the county on all matters related to county business. So my budget presentation will address sort of what the County Counsel's Office does for the county, our sources of revenue and what our expenditures are, and some cost benefits of using in-house counsel versus using outside counsel. So just as an introduction, County Counsel is the county's law firm, so we serve as our in-house advocates and advisors to the county. Our goal and our mission is to deliver cost-effective and quality legal services and creative solutions and viable alternatives. One of the worst things that an in-house, especially governmental attorney group can get is to get the reputation of being the office of no. It's very easy to tell people no, why they can't do things. And my experience is once you start telling people no, they can't do things, then they just stop asking you questions. And then you have to deal with the impacts of them having done things. So our goal is to always find a way to get our clients, the county and its people, where they need to go. And so that's part of providing proactive advice and advocacy based on our long-term relationships and ongoing knowledge of what the county's is. Every department has an assigned county liaison, so they know who their person who they need to speak to is on a particular matter. So we provide legal advice. We review and negotiate all the county's contracts and other transactions, and we attend and advise the Board of Commissioners and the other committees and boards and public hearings. We represent the county in litigation matters, either through in-house counsel or through direct supervision of outside counsel. We're currently using mostly outside counsel for all of our litigation matters. Our last in-house litigator left about a little over a year ago to become the city attorney for the city of Ashland. We've been actively and continuing recruiting to find new in-house litigation representatives. We've been unsuccessful, so we continue. It's in our budget to continue to try to recruit. We have the FTE assigned for it, but until we're able to find that person and make an offer and get them on board, we're going to have to continue to outsource most of our representation when it comes to litigation. We represent the county administrative hearings, and so that's matters before the Land Use Board of Appeals, dealing with appeals of county land use decisions in front of the Employment Relations Board as it comes to county and its collective bargaining with our employees and anything else that involves in administrative proceedings. And then I serve as the lead, along with one of the attorneys in my office, when it comes to labor relations, when it comes to negotiating the contracts with our now four unions. We're currently in active negotiations with two of them, a brand new union representing the Sergeants Association and the longstanding unit representing the Sheriff's Office deputies and non-sworn personnel. So our proposed staffing level is, it remains the same. It's 6 attorneys, 6 people. It's 1 county counsel, which is myself, and it's half FTE paid from council, and half is my other hat being the deputy county administrator. We have 1 deputy county counsel, 3 assistant county counsels. One of those is the vacant litigation attorney that I'm continuing to recruit for, and 1 assistant county counsel, along with 2 administrative professionals. One is a project program coordinator, and that's a 0.6 FTE. The other 0.4 is under county administration and risk management. With this sort of reorganization, risk management has been brought under county counsel, and so she serves both as the project program coordinator for council as well as the risk coordinator, and then a 0.9 administrative assistant. Our revenue sources, so we have 2 sort of direct revenue sources. One is we bill out for advice in non-litigation matters. So we do chargeback based upon the percentage of use by each department. So we look at how much each department is using, and they then pay a percentage of our overall cost, along with litigation matters. So we bill on an hourly basis at the chargeback rate for when it comes to risk management matters when handled by in-house counsel. So if we take a look at our revenue sources, 57% of those are the interdepartmental funds, and so those are things like airport, expo, HHS, roads and parks, self-insurance, and the surveyor. 31% come from sort of the general fund, which is the assessor, clerk, community justice, DA, justice court, and those funds. And then only 12% comes from the fiduciary funds, which are the audit, Board of Commissioners, CAO, facility maintenance, GIS. And so how our revenue works is every year we make a budget guess of how much we're going to, as a percentage, work for each of the departments, and then at the end of the year we do a true-up chargeback. And so if you use counsel more than we had anticipated, you get a bill. If you use counsel less than we anticipated, you get a credit. So if we look at expenditures, our total budgeted for recommended budget for 26-27 is $1.696 million. It's only an increase of 1.08% from last year. Our personnel has gone up about 1.21% from last year, and materials and services are increasing at 4.84%, which is largely driven by other chargebacks and things that we pay for other things, along with the increased materials and services. So if we look at expenditures, 91% of council's budget is the staff of council, and only 9% is materials and services. So we are greatly impacted by things that impact the cost of personnel. If we look at the cost of efficiency, so every year we want to show that we are a better value for the county than for if the county decided to hire outside lawyers. And so we take a look at what outside lawyers would cost. And so we take a look at both Portland, because that's where, if we're going to stay in state, the vast majority of sort of those specialty lawyers are going to exist. We look at Medford, because there's some very good general practice lawyers in Medford who could provide some service to the county. And then we look at sort of what our rate is. So Portland rates are averaging, as we looked around, about $1,150 an hour, and if we look at sort of the highest rate for an in-house county counsel, it's about $207 is the all-in cost. We look at low rate, we're pretty close to sort of what an entry-level attorney would cost, either in Portland, Medford, or internally. And then if we look at sort of the average rate, which are those senior assistant county counsels, we come in about a third of what Portland would cost, and a little less than half of what it would cost to hire an equivalent attorney in Medford on an hourly basis. But one of the great things about in-house county counsel, which is a benefit, is that we have a fixed cost. So we're salaried employees, and no matter how much we work, we have a fixed cost. Outside counsel bills on an hour basis, so the more you use them, the more they cost, and there's no cost cap on that. So we are cost-effective, fixed cost in knowing how much it's going to cost. And then as we look at, we do save significantly compared to using in-house counsel, even at the loaded rate, all-in sort of cost of what a counsel would cost in-house versus trying to hire someone from the outside to provide the same level of service. That's all I have. Any questions?
I just
So
want you to
I-
know, I want you
Go
to know I
ahead.
told
Yeah,
Joel to
go
talk
ahead.
fast because he's billing us by the hour for this.
I was trying to hit my 10 minutes and leave some time for questions,
I
so
thought somebody told you there was a prize for finishing first or something.
there's always a prize.
Felt like I was at an auction. a few times.
So I was going to say, Joel, that you absolutely, having in-house counsel is a cost benefit. There's no question about it, and for the reasons that you indicated. However, there's one other reason that you didn't indicate, and that is having the staff on board in-house helps to protect the county from possible lawsuits and litigation just by your presence and being able to counsel and advise not only the commissioners and other elected officials, but folks who are on the front line dealing with the public in areas that are in fact impacted by risk and/or contracts.
Absolutely, Chair Morrison. That's why we don't want to be the office of no, so that we can be in there to advise people on a proactive basis as opposed to reacting to decisions and impacts that were already made.
Yeah. So that may be, in my mind, one of your biggest benefits. And of course, having in-house counsel and using outside counsel is a necessary evil, and it is a best practice. You know, all major corporations, organizations, et cetera, especially those this size or bigger, all have in-house counsel, and they all use outside counsel for special litigation. So makes complete sense in my mind.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next up is Health and Human Services, Stacy. So Stacy, I have you down for two things.
I'm lucky that way.
Yeah, I know. So the first one is the human service agencies, for which you have 10 minutes allocated, and then you have Health and Human Services, in which you have 20 minutes allocated. So I'm going to roll those together
Okay.
and just tell them to set the clock at 30 minutes.
Lovely.
Okay?
That'll work.
All right.
All right,
I
Janelle is
assume our
handing
timekeeper
out
got
my
that.
stuff.
Thank you.
No, you can just wait for 5 minutes before you start it. All right, I'm ready. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I am going to start off with the Human Service Partner grants. These are grants that you've been doing for years, but wanted to take the opportunity to be able to just review them and be able to have you hear about the good work they're doing. So these are agencies that have put in for these dollars. This is several years of us giving them. They provide what we would refer to as safety net services. The definition of a safety net service are really programs that provide critical needs to vulnerable individuals and families in Jackson County. This is a list of our current recipients, and so Access delivers Rogue Power pack meals for children. They get $30,000 a year. Center for Nonprofit Legal Services provides legal services for low-income residents. They get $50,000. Children's Advocacy Center, who you're actually going to hear as the representative today for these folks in a few minutes, gives specialized medical services for children, and they get $22,000 a year. We have Community Volunteer Network, who provides a foster grandparenting program, $10,000 a year. Foods for Friends, which is run through RVCOG, delivers senior meals on wheels for $30,000. Golden Rule Reentry, one of the newer nonprofits in our community, offers a drop-in center for previously justice-involved individuals and their families at $44,800. And then we have the Sexual Assault Response Team, which is also known as SART. They deliver survivor care and support through their specially trained and certified nurses who are available 24/7. They get $14,000, and then Upper Road Community Center provides emergency service supports like food, assistance with utility bills, those kind of things, and for a total of $209,000. I think all of these agencies do a great job and really do a lot for the amount of money that they receive to deliver these services. So today, Tammy Pitson, who's the Executive Director for Children's Advocacy Center, is who's going to represent today. And I'm just going to throw up, just so you know who she's talking on behalf of. So Tammy.
All right, I'm kind of short, and I sound like a frog today. I'm allergic to nature this time of year. Good afternoon. I want to begin by sincerely thanking the Budget Committee members, the Board of Commissioners, the County Administrator, my fellow Safety Net directors, and Stacy Brubaker for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the directors of the nonprofits funded through the Health and Human Services Safety Net grants. Your support makes a tangible difference in the lives of our most vulnerable community members, and I'm truly honored and humbled to be here to share that work with you today. I have the distinct pleasure of being the Executive Director of the Children's Advocacy Center of Jackson County. We are an organization whose success is built on collaborative relationships with many agencies across many disciplines. We serve youth ages 0 to 18 in Jackson County who have experienced abuse or witnessed violent crimes. We serve roughly 600 local children in a year with over 5,000 individual services. Jackson County's Health and Human Services grant funding serves as a vital backbone for a coordinated community-wide safety net that protects our most vulnerable residents and strengthens overall community stability. These dollars do far more than fund individual programs. They enable a collaborative network of providers to work together efficiently to reduce duplication and ensure that no individual or family falls through the cracks. The organizations funded through the Health and Human Services Safety Net grants provide a vital safety net and create lasting impact throughout Jackson County. Some examples of this are Access connects families with essential services and resources to meet immediate needs. The Center for Nonprofit Legal Services ensures access to justice for vulnerable populations. The Community Volunteer Network mobilizes local volunteers to support critical community programs. The Golden Rule Reentry helps formerly incarcerated individuals reintegrate successfully, reducing recidivism. Rogue Valley Council of Governments coordinates regional services and strengthens local systems. Jackson County SART provides coordinated medical care and response for adult victims of sexual assault. The Upper Rogue Community Center offers vital social, educational, and health resources to strengthen families and communities in the Upper Rogue Valley. At the Children's Advocacy Center of Jackson County, we provide forensic interviews, forensic medical evaluations, therapy, and advocacy and support services for children who experienced abuse, ensuring they receive compassionate and coordinated care. Together, these organizations form a network of support that not only addresses urgent needs, but builds resilience and lasting positive outcomes for individuals and families across our county. The impact of the funds is both immediate and long-lasting. In the short term, they provide access to essential services such as crisis intervention, mental health support, legal and advocacy, and resources to meet basic needs. This support stabilizes families, protects children, and connects individuals in crisis to the care that they need. Over the long term, these coordinated efforts strengthen community resilience, reduce reliance on emergency services and the criminal justice and healthcare systems, and prevent more severe and costly outcomes, creating lasting positive change for individuals and families across the county. Equally important is the role these grants play in leveraging additional resources. Local funding demonstrates community commitment and positions organizations to successfully compete for state, federal, and private funding opportunities. Every dollar invested by Jackson County often brings multiple additional dollars into the region, amplifying the overall impact. Health and Human Services funding also supports workforce sustainability in a sector that is experiencing significant strain. By helping organizations maintain competitive wages, manageable caseloads, and essential program capacity, these grants ensure that skilled professionals remain in our community, providing consistent and high-quality care. At its core, this collaborative safety net reflects a shared value that the well-being of individuals and families is a collective responsibility. The continued investment of Jackson County Commissioners in Health and Human Services grants is not only an investment in services, it is an investment in prevention, resilience, and long-term health of our community. Without these funds, the most vulnerable residents face greater risk. With these funds, Jackson County remains a place where coordinated care, compassion, and accountability come together to create meaningful and measurable impact. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the good work being done in our community to build resilience and a safe community for our children and our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have questions for her? Okay, thank you very much. Stacy, I know that there might be folks out there in the general public who wonder how arbitrarily the county has come up with the list of folks to be given these awards, and I know that it's not arbitrary at all. And I wonder if you would share the intense process you went through with your staff a couple of years ago to identify the folks who are getting these awards.
Sure, I'm happy to. Jackson County actually released a request for proposals that allowed anybody who was interested in applying for these dollars for safety net related services to be able to apply for those. Many of these grants have been held by the same individuals for years without really ever going back out. So it was a new process for many of them, and so we do have some that have been there a while and others that were brand new, but it was overseen by one of our staff, and we had multiple participants of folks who reviewed the proposals, ranked them, and ultimately determined who the final recipients were and the dollar amount that they received.
And if I'm recalling correctly, part of the criteria that was used was how well these organizations support the ongoing work of county efforts.
Correct.
Yeah, so they are an enhancement, if you will, or a support of county services, if you will.
And they do amazing work, for
Yes.
sure.
Thank you.
That answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay, great.
Anybody else? Okay.
23 extra seconds on my 20, so go.
There you go.
All right, so now I am going to present on the Health and Human Services Department's budget. Again, my name is Stacy Brubaker, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director over Health and Human Services. So just for some grounding, Health and Human Services mission is really to plan, coordinate, and promote public services that protect and promote the health and well-being of Jackson County residents. This first slide I wanted to show was just to give a snapshot around how we get our money and where it comes from. You'll see there our requested budget amount is $92,221,767. You'll see that the largest part of that, 76% of it, is in the green, which means grants and gifts, which also includes all of our contracts that we have with the state, primarily with the Oregon Health Authority. You can see the lighter purple is 6% of that, and that really comes from the fees and other charges we're able to gather throughout the year. 8% of that is really general fund support. That primarily goes to the Animal Services Program, the Veteran Services Program, as well as some public health services. The 7% is our interfund reimbursements, which we get from other departments, primarily for jail medical. And then 3% is kind of a smattering of a variety of different small amounts that we get through different contracts, donations, and those types of things. This next one I wanted to show is really around our workforce and our need to increase the workforce to support our expanded services and the requirements that are put on us by our contracts, as well as the needs of our community. This year in our budget, we'll have 249.35 FTE. We're the largest department in the county. And you can see from these charts, historically how our FTE has come and gone. Really where you see the most growth is that last bar of the developmental disabilities program. We've added a lot of resource and FTE over the years because of the growth in services. And then you can see mental health has kind of been up and then down, and now we are on the rise back again, basically because of the demand for services that we have. So that's just really a snapshot into our workforce and over the years to support the growth and expectations of the work. So the next thing I wanted to really do is do some department highlights and challenges, and I'm going to do that by each division or program area. Where I wanted to start with was animal services. This includes both the shelter as well as our animal control program. Again, we have a growing demand and system response need in this area. We currently have 16.5 FTE. There's no state or federal revenue that goes into these services. These are 100% either general fund or based on the fees that we gather. Some of the challenges that we continue to have are really the ongoing high demand for public and law enforcement resource to be able to manage to the dog population in the community, as well as our current structure and facility really limits our capacity to be able to do our job efficiently. And although we're not really shooting for a whole bunch of new capacity in our new facility, we're really hoping that we get some efficiencies and be able to serve more because we're able to move them forward quicker. Some of our key highlights, record number of dogs we've served over this year. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that they've come to the shelter. We've really increased our efforts to try to get strays and lost animals back to their owners through social media and through working with community members to be able to help us find the dogs and where they go. Coming to a shelter is really unsettling to the animals, so we really want to keep them out as much as we can and get them back where they belong. So we have spent a lot of time in that over the past year. As you are aware, we are planning for a new facility and have gone through that process with the architects in the process of looking for a contractor and really have the programming dialed in so that we're able to hopefully move forward with that as quick as possible. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, which you've probably heard through the media, is our support of a large-scale animal neglect case that was out of Eagle Point. I think that the thing about that highlights really how much we can do when we work together and when we work with other municipalities and community members, the difference we can make in some of those worst case scenario situations. And the animals that did come out of that have been able to move on to happier and healthier lives because of those efforts. So again, the demand continues to exceed the current facility capacity and also drives the need for continued infrastructure expansion. The next one I want to talk about is our Developmental Disability Services Division. Again, this has been a huge area of growth and demand. Over the past several years, we're up to 69 FTE requested. For this year, it's 100% state funded. Just some of the key highlights that this program has been able to do over the past year: they've served 2,050 individuals. That's a 5 to 6% annual growth rate. And like I already mentioned, we've increased to 69 FTE in an effort to manage that caseload. We really shoot to have our caseloads around 50 per case manager, and we really are above that level even with an amount of FTE that we've added. There is on average 25 new applications per month. Those applications are pretty detailed and require a lot of work, so 25 a month is actually a huge accomplishment. And then really the ongoing growth in this division is really driven by eligibility expansion, especially among kids. The next thing I want to talk about is our environmental public health program. These are kind of the unsung heroes. We only have 7.10 FTE in this program, but they do a lot of work, as you can see by the numbers underneath them. This is a 10% state and federal funded program. The rest comes through general fund or fees that we collect through these efforts. So some of our key metrics for the past year, this small but mighty group, did 2,578 inspections. That was meeting all 100% of the ones that were required. 5,011 food handlers were tested for, so we have that many food handlers permits out in the county, and 169 drinking water alerts were addressed. Some of the other program activities were 39 water system surveys were completed. The new aquatic facility rules were implemented. That was a new thing to not just our staff, but also to the community as a whole. And then the creation of an online air quality complaint system launched. The areas that this team will need to continue to focus and have challenge for, there are a lot of new rules coming up around Oregon food sanitation and the implementation of that and overseeing and making sure that folks are in compliance with that, as well as a newly launched electronic health system with OHA to kind of monitor some of these goings on in the field so that we have something to be able to track and show what we've been doing with the programs that we're responsible for. So this area really has a lot of adapting to do on a regular basis just because of the ever-evolving state regulations and the systems changes. The next one is not one I've included historically, but I think it's important for folks to know that this is our health administration division. And they really, as we have grown, we've had to add some additional support to manage that growth, the compliance, and the systems complexity. So this division has 18.9 FTE based on the total employee cost across the department. And really the key role has been to improve our compliance and quality to make sure that we continue to deliver the services we are obligated to do and that we're doing that well. Overseeing our contracts to make sure that we are monitoring those and keeping up with the expectations we have of folks that we contract with. We offer our support to human resources by having our own liaison that does payroll and new employee and all of those things that with as big of department we have, we need to have our own resource for that. And then really ensuring that we are good stewards of the public funds and that we are monitoring that and watching to ensure that we are spending that money appropriately. The current pressures really are managing the budget to be able to support the ongoing increased cost of supplies and our demand for services, and then the ongoing increased administrative burden from both the state and federal funding streams. That continues to grow. It doesn't go away. It gets more and more, and so we really have to have enough people paying attention to that so we can keep the money coming in. The next one I wanted to talk about is our biggest division within the department, which is our mental health services division. They have 88.85 FTE and 69.83% of that is state and federal revenue. The rest really comes from a variety of contracts and billing. And really focused on expanding the demand and the system response as is required by our contracts. So some of the key areas of focus over the past year has really been strengthening our mobile crisis response. The long-term goal for that is that we would have a 2-person response to be able to respond to any mental health crisis 24/7. Also expanding our services for the forensic diversion population. These are the individuals who have behavioral health challenges at the nexus of community justice involvement and really trying to get supports for those folks to be able to try to keep them out of the revolving door. And then we've also been focusing on older adults with behavioral health challenges. This is the largest growing population in the county, and we need to be able to have some specialty services and be able to meet that demand going forward as well. Some of the other system pressures we've faced over the past year, children and youth services increased demand, especially in the crisis related areas, as well as some of our specialty services that we provide, especially for multi-systems involved kids. Our workforce capacity, really being able to make sure that we're not only recruiting and hiring, but we're retaining that staff and talent and being able to keep them to deliver the expertise and the services that are needed in this area. And then just the higher contract and outcome expectations that come, it seems, with every reiteration of our contract with this Oregon Health Authority. Some of the initiatives we'll be watching for over the next year. There's a lot of rules and new expectations and requirements around the aid and assist population. That's the population who's determined that they are unable to aid and assist in their own defense for whatever crime they might have been charged with due to their behavioral health challenges. These are the folks that end up at the state hospital and are taking up the beds there, so we can't get the folks that are civilly committed on the mental health issues up there, and then we are responsible for their coordination and getting them out of that program into the community and on their way, and again, with the intention of trying to keep them out of that system going forward. And then we also are in the process of applying to become a certified community behavioral health clinic, also known as a CCBHC. This will really qualify us to be able to maybe have some diversity in our funding that we haven't had before, and really be able to try to offer the supports to the population that comes in our door, whether it's substance use disorder or mental health challenges. So the new funding from OHA, although it has increased, it's also increased with its demands and what's expected of us from that. So that will be one of the ongoing things in the next year. The other thing I wanted to spend some time talking about is our opioid settlement dollars. These are one-time dollars that come through the county's involvement in that settlement. And we only currently fund 0.25 FTE. There's no state or federal funding in that. And we really try to do one-time initiatives because we know that this isn't sustainable. You can't build a program off of it. So here are some of our key investments. We've given some dollars to CASA to be able to do some additional training with the staff that serve those families who are involved with the child welfare system due to their opioid or substance use involvement and issues, and helping them have the skill sets they need to intervene and deal with those challenges. Many of you have probably seen our KOBI partnership around If Not Now When campaign that really is encouraging parents to talk to their kids about the concerns around fentanyl, accepting medications or drugs from someone else, and really being able to have those difficult conversations, trying to get a little bit more upstream. As you probably heard about in the community justice presentation today, we are funding some positions that support the efforts being done in the jail through the jail and community justice called the Jail Release Resource Program. We fund a few of those positions, and we also oversee the contracts with the peer network that supports those efforts. We've also given some seed money for the treatment services that Kiki reviewed today that have been happening at the Transition Center. These dollars started that, and since then that organization has been able to move into ongoing payment, so they don't require the opioid funding anymore to continue those services at the Transition Center. And then we, as last year, we will continue to set aside some money towards a crisis stabilization center, primarily around the programming and the planning, in an effort to be able to help lead that conversation for the community as to what they need and what we need from crisis stabilization services. Some of the funding constraints that I already mentioned, funding is not for ongoing services, so we really do try to figure out one-time investments. As the money comes in, the dollar amounts vary in size, how often you get them, what the requirements are, so that can make planning somewhat challenging. And then we've already identified that there continues to be more need for education, prevention, and treatment, especially a little bit more upstream towards our kids. Public Health Services Division really has high service delivery and really does deliver a large community impact. They have 42 FTE, 76.68% is state and federal revenue. Some of their key impact metrics this past year, they delivered 5,436 immunizations, being the highest provider of children's immunizations in the county. We had 7,468 women with infants and children participants, so it's really focuses on health and nutrition for newborns and young age children and their parents. 4.2 million of those dollars that came in through the WIC services went right back out into the community in supporting some of our local businesses as far as grocery stores, as well as our local farmers markets. Additional activity was they were able to do 1,154 school immunization compliance orders, tracked 1,141 communicable disease cases. There were 67 disease outbreaks that the communicable disease program managed to. And then, as mentioned before, we had 33,000 farm direct dollars paid to local farmers as part of WIC participants being able to go to farmer markets and use those dollars. The system pressures are going to continue to be the ongoing impacts of federal level changes. We just need to watch those closely, and the ongoing high demand for services in these areas. And then I have the Veteran Services Program. So expanding access and financial benefits. There's 6 FTE in this program. 33.7% is state funded. The rest is general fund. The key impacts, they conducted 3,128 interviews and submitted that many claims. They had 1.6 million in new awards come through, and that's a 45% increase from last year. 64 million in retroactive benefits to our veterans in the community. That's a 38% increase. The service's focus really was increased access to federal and state benefits, strengthening the community relationships that we have with veteran service agencies, and ensuring high quality claims up front so that we're not having to do a lot of backup training. And maintaining visibility and outreach across the community will continue to be one of those challenges and obligations and opportunities that we have going forward, and reducing any of the barriers to services for veterans, which oftentimes include stigma or their belief that they are non-deserving. So continue to try to address those. My last slide is really around looking ahead at our key priorities. Major initiatives is the dog control facility, the application for the Certified Community Behavioral Health Center, and as mentioned before, the Crisis Stabilization Center continued efforts. Our organizational focus will really be trying to strengthen our data so that we can tell our story and be able to continue to receive the dollars that currently fund our programs. Analytics and outcomes, we actually have a team of epidemiologists, something we've never had before, that is really able to track our data and be able to help us anticipate what might be coming and be able to be prepared for that, and then continued alignment of services with the ongoing community needs as they're identified as we go forward. So it's my belief these efforts position the department to expand capacity, improve outcomes, and better serve the community in the year ahead. Thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes. So I wanted to talk a little bit about grant funding. As you mentioned and showed us, like 76% of your budget this coming year is going to be grant funded. And my observations around the challenges of managing these grants is that, number one, the grant money can only be used for the purposes intended by the grant. So you don't have the option of being able to spend that money over here or over there. You have to spend it exactly where the grant says they're funding.
That
Correct?
is true.
Yes.
Comes obligated.
Also, when you receive a grant, especially a large one, you might be in a position where you have to hire quite a few people. I've seen in the past where you've had to hire 60 or 70 FTEs to be able to service a grant in the way that the grantee has, or the grantor has indicated. And that sometimes we can see a fluctuation dramatically in your workforce up and down, where you're hiring a bunch of people and general public might be saying, well, Health and Human Services is out there hiring a whole bunch of people. Where are they getting all that money from? Getting it from these grants. And when the grant goes away, so do those positions. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct. We do try to be at least thoughtful about what that might look like.
Sure, of course. And maybe you can reuse these people in other grants or not, or it's all a challenge in managing that whole process. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Maybe you want to comment a little bit more on what I said. I don't know.
No, I appreciate that. And I actually meant to say that that green slice, that 76%, that really is all obligated. We don't have a lot of latitude about how we apply those dollars. Those come down through our contracts. And it really outlines what we have to do with those dollars. And I can't say, oh, I want to take something I got in mental health and give it over to the animal services program. That's not how it works.
We haven't had any huge fluctuations in staff really since the CCO debacle, I'll call it.
Good.
And part of that also is most of these programs carry a fund balance in their overall fund balance, so we can smooth the curve quite a bit if we have a curve to smooth.
Good.
And we haven't seen any, I mean, I don't believe we've seen huge increases like in developmental disabilities, and that actually, Stacy didn't cover this, but it's the result of a lawsuit for the state requiring them to make more investments into it. So they continually increase our contract and try to get us to hire more people to serve the needs.
Rick? So the Crisis Stabilization Center that we've been talking about for a while, I know this is crystal ball stuff, but I mean, obviously law enforcement, the recovery community, a lot of providers think that this is just an absolutely vital part of what we can do here. Is there any ETA or idea when that might come to fruition, or?
That is a great question, and you're right, it is a crystal ball kind of question. I think what we've been trying to do is shepherd the conversation around what that might look like and what potential funding opportunities there are. There is not a billable code for crisis stabilization services, and so there's not a bucket of money. And so we could certainly work towards with other community partners about how we might build a crisis stabilization center, but there is no sustainable dollars. And so until that question gets asked, it's not just us, it's many communities across the state trying to figure out, okay, if you build it, then what? How do you fund the services on an ongoing basis?
And those conversations about making that a billable service, I mean, are they being discussed? Is that something that we need to lobby and advocate for? I mean, obviously it is, but where is best our efforts put to do something like that?
So the state is certainly having that conversation. There are other states who do have that code that allows them to be able to bill for that, and that's somewhat how they've sustained these stabilization centers. My understanding from the state is it would require a waiver, and those waivers with the feds only come around so many years often, so we'll have to wait and see. I think that that's part of the conversation, is that will be in the next waiver request, is some kind of funding around a crisis stabilization center.
Yeah, I just want to add, just so there's no false impression here, we're going backwards on that, in my opinion. We had what we believe would be a waiver for Medicaid in the jail. That was reversed, and this was next up for a waiver. And with the current federal administration we have, there's not a lot of desire to fund waivers and fund additional services. So while Stacy said that is the vehicle, that's been the vehicle in the past, it's very highly unlikely, in my opinion, that we will get there anytime soon.
Yeah, Randy?
So the other states that actually offer crisis stabilization centers and are billing for it, did they get a waiver, or do they have a different type of mechanism to be able to bill for it?
I think that there's a combination of those. There are some that have waivers. There are others whose state has invested in that through their own buckets of money for the cost of a stabilization, and at least some kind of formula that allows them to keep their doors open. So I think it's a combination.
Colleen?
Along that same line, on the Crisis Stabilization Center, you said money's being set aside. How much is set aside? Do you know?
Right now, we have about $2 million that we have put in there. I'm hoping we're working towards maybe looking at an RFP going out for somebody to actually propose a plan of how they might set this up. Many of them across the state have been set up by private providers in the community that have money. They build it, they build something next to it that is the revenue generator, and that's how they support the but we're not that far yet. We're just having those conversations at the moment, but those dollars would potentially be thrown in to a bucket among other people's dollars, not just the county's.
Okay, thank you.
That $2 million is opioid settlement dollars, correct? Yeah.
Also, this is mostly for Commissioner Sparacino, since he answered the question, and also I don't believe Ms. Barton would probably know this either, but the county at one point did put together a coalition of people to fund a crisis stabilization facility. It included an investment by the hospitals, the funding mechanism before CCOs, Jefferson Behavioral Health Care, I think, was the payer, along with the county, and the county can contribute. We just can't afford to pay for the whole thing. We don't receive any funds from our local property tax base to provide these services, and essentially the state funds aren't allowable. So what happened last time is the hospitals backed out at the very last minute and it kind of fell apart. And we have been pushing, I'm going to say, for more than 20 years. So when I say I don't have a lot of hope on this waiver mechanism, that's after trying all of these other methods of doing it.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. All right, we're moving into public comment again. We will take public comment. Folks will be restricted to 3 minutes. I will ask that anybody who is going to speak today will limit their comments to relevancy around the budget. This is the Budget Committee, and what we want to hear from folks are things about the budget. We also have Zoom, potential Zoom members who might like to comment. You can use the hands up option on Zoom, and one of our staff will be able to connect you into making a comment when it's your turn. So do we have anybody in the audience who would like to come forward and give public comment? Okay, Carmen, do we have any Zoom folks that would like to comment?
Mr. Chair, there's no one on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay, well then we'll move through that, and I will remind the committee members that we will reconvene on Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, and we will continue hearings and ultimately deliberate the budget. So with that, we are adjourned till then. Excuse me, recess till then. I even underlined.